We are the Newsroom team. Very good morning to you. This is Rene West. That is Kenna Mahamate. I'm Evan Jansen. We're with you until midday today, bringing you all the latest news and updates from not just around the country and the continent, but also around the world. It's a heavy news day today. A lot happening now. Today we're dealing with a specific question. Our top story, actually, on the show today. HIV treatment from today. HIV treatment for all. That is what we have in South Africa. Is this the answer? What do you think? HIV treatment for all, no matter what your status. That is the case from today. We've also got a lot of other issues we're dealing with. You can send us your views on any story that's either on the show or in the news, and we'll put it up. If it is any good and if it's not hate speech or bigotry. This is the Newsroom show. We'll be with you for the rest of the morning. First up, the news with Rene West.
As from today, all people with HIV will have access to treatment upon diagnosis, irrespective of their CD4 count. One of South Africa's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, pulls the plug on some of the country's COE's financial backing. And Gabon's parliament has been set on fire in ongoing protests after President Ali Bongo was declared the winner of the presidential poll. Before we get to that news, let's go over to Kendall Mahamate, who has your sports.
Good morning. Good morning to both of you. Quite a lot happening in the world of sports. I think worldwide the transfer deadline has come and gone. Very interesting stuff coming out.
Yeah, it was a very busy day. Interesting. I followed it on my phone and on telly. It was some interesting last-minute deals there. It'll be interesting to see what you've got.
No, definitely. I would also like to be chatting to you about it a little later on. Rene, if you've got some stuff to throw our way, please do it. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today. The football transfer window closed at midnight last night, and the big signing on everyone's lips in South Africa is Adele Ngongo's return from Europe to join Mamelodi Sundowns.
Oh, straight up! He's left it alone and it's gone onto his stumps. He was expecting it to go across him, and first delivery, Dale Steyn strikes.
The Palabra Express, Dale Steyn underlines his bowling supremacy as he reclaims his crown as the top test bowler in the world.
Quintana needs the win for the time bonus, but Froome is opening up a gap, and Froome is showing himself to be the favourite to win the race overall as he repeats 2011.
And the top two riders in La Vuelta, Froome and Quintana, go wheel to wheel in the last climb. Froome wins the stage, but Quintana holds on to the leader's journey. All this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin, but for now it's back to Rene West, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Starting from today, all people with HIV will begin treatment upon diagnosis, irrespective of their CD4 count. This is in line with the World Health Organization's new HIV guideline, which says every HIV-positive person should be initiated on treatment immediately after diagnosis. Previously, treatment was started after a person's CD4 count dropped below 500. South Africa has the world's largest HIV treatment program with over 3 million people on antiretrovirals. Deputy Director for HIV and AIDS in the National Health Department, Dr. Jürgen Pillay, says the country can't afford not to treat patients. Now, in other news, economists say the move by SA's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, is a show of no confidence in state enterprises and the state as a whole. Future Growth has stopped lending money to 6 of the country's largest state-owned companies temporarily. These include Eskom, Transnet, Sanral, the Land Bank, the IDC, and the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Future Growth says the decision was informed by perceived poor leadership in these institutions. Wits University professor Tshepo Mongalo says the decision by Future Growth is a sound warning to government to better manage state-owned enterprises. Some economists say some of these state companies run a risk of possible liquidation. The rand is currently reflecting market concerns about state-owned entitles, institutions and political risk in South Africa. And a fixed income asset manager, Future Growth, now says it has halted lending to some state-owned companies. While earlier Eskom hit back at the Treasury following claims it did not cooperate with an investigation into coal contracts. CEO Brian Molefe has also defended the power utilities' dealings with Gupta-owned Tegeta Exploration and Resources, saying that if he has been captured, it's by the Constitution. Eskom was before the Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee.
A day to report on financials, but it soon turned into a mini-inquiry into the relationship between Eskom and Tegeta, and the power utility also dismissed any suggestions of capture.
This campaign to kill trust in Eskom, to actually portray us as if we are committed or we are bought or we are captured, is nonsense.
Perhaps I'm captured, but I'm captured by the Constitution.
The power utility also rejected suggestions that it blocked a Treasury investigation into Tegeta.
Our understanding was that after it has been considered by the board, it will be sent to the National Treasury. There was no attempt on our part not to comply.
Eskom also moved to defend coal supplies by Tegeta, saying they were above board, and also defended a 500 million rand advance given to Tegeta, saying this is a normal commercial practice. Capital expenditure by mining companies amounts to 38 billion rand.
The capital expenditure that are required by these mines, obviously the bill for that is footed by Eskom. So we basically make an upfront payment to them in terms of the capital requirements for those mines.
Brian Molefe occasionally took swipes at Treasury, saying they should have summoned him to make a warning statement if Treasury felt Eskom was not cooperating with the Tegeta investigation. Molefe says Treasury approved tender deviations for Tegeta.
The Treasury itself approved a deviation for Korenfontein mine on the 17th of August. Perhaps the Guptas have also captured the Treasury.
The committee is considering calling Eskom back to a joint meeting with the Treasury. This is in order to resolve the contradicting statements between the Treasury and Eskom. Ulilani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
National Treasury says it will not comment publicly on Denel's statement. South Africa's aerospace and defence company issued a statement last night lambasting Treasury for its threat to bring court action to stop the Denel Asia joint venture. It says the move is political, sheer opportunism and grandstanding, but it welcomes Public Enterprise Minister Lynn Brown's call to talk through how best to resolve all the state-owned enterprise issues. Denel says it served Treasury with a pre-notification of its intention to establish Denel Asia in October 2015, but claims Treasury never raised any objections. Denel says it was only when the name of the Guptas was linked to Denel Asia that National Treasury sent a letter to request further information from the company. The company says allegations that it's captured by the Guptas are unfounded and politically motivated. It insists the Gupta family has no business or joint venture with Denel, and none of the Gupta family members or relatives are shareholders in Denel Asia. The company says Treasury's threat of litigation will be a violation of Chapter 3 of the Constitution, and it intends to vigorously oppose it. The Passenger Rail Service Agency has told a media briefing in Cape Town that it will implement a turnaround strategy in October to address challenges that has tarnished its image. These include, among others, dealing with internal problems and vandalism of its infrastructure. The state-owned agency has recently been in the news for all the wrong reasons, including billions spent on irregular expenditure and dodgy tenders.
We aim to ensure that we increase our revenue by reducing fare evasion. We aim to ensure that we do a bit of realignment of our structures internally to ensure that we have got controls and that our supply chain management processes are intact and they are working.
In news from the rest of the continent, protesters have set fire to Gabon's parliament after President Ali Bongo was declared the winner of Saturday's presidential poll. Thousands of people took to the streets after the announcement and accused the government of stealing the election. At least 6 people have been admitted to hospital with bullet wounds. Several of the wounded said they were shot by security forces. The parliament lies on the same road as the state TV headquarters, several embassies and the French Culture Center. According to official results, Bongo won the poll by taking 49% of the vote to 48% for his rival Jean Ping. The Department of International Relations has asked South African citizens to stay indoors. Well, that's your top news for now, but let's go over to Eben, who has some more news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ren. I've been trying to get through to Gabon to get an update on the situation there. Unfortunately, our lines have just gone down, so let's carry on with the show in the meantime and have a look at what's on social media at this hour. What are the trends you should be following that's in the news? Of course, it seems that, well, everyone, including me, very colourful day, in a good mood on social media, as the trends seem to be light and fresh today. We start with a hashtag that we should all have a look at, Spring Day. Although South Africa is going through a severe drought and we have yet to see some green pastures, one can feel that summer is on its way. So happy Spring Day to all of you from the Newsroom team. Here are some of the fun pictures and comments doing the rounds with regards to Spring Day. It's spring, but we haven't woken up to blossoming trees. Change takes time. That was a sign that was spotted at our nursery. Spring is here. I'm so excited. I wet my plants. Then Jenny says, due to recent setbacks, my summer beach body will be postponed another year. As usual, your patience is appreciated. I think many people share that view. Bonnie says, I love the township, but not when these little aliens sit around the corner with a bucket of water waiting for you. Of course, it's the 1st of September. On a serious note, the conversation has started. Heritage Month, that's the hashtag. Our very own Minister of Arts and Culture, Nathi Mthethwa, wants to know what you appreciate the most about your heritage. Now, you can tweet the Minister at Nathi Mthethwa SA. What do you like most about your heritage? The Minister wants to hear from you, so tweet him there on screen. Then here's a nice picture of unity from Kusatu. Oh, very interesting. Interesting beads. Also, of course, today, for those of you that are in the know, it's the solar eclipse today. That's the hashtag to look at. We will be able to witness the celestial event from around 10 a.m. That's in about 45 minutes this morning until 11 a.m. Now, this person has done quite the calculation. Rwanda is one of the countries that will see the eclipse the best, but someone in Mauritius is very excited and is hoping to see the eclipse as this image. That's what we will see in about 45 minutes time. So keep an eye on it. It's a very interesting event. It's signal new beginnings, they say. New beginnings, all things new. It's a new month. It's spring, fresh. Keep it together today. Of course, let's go back to what's happening in Gabon now. We've got somebody on the line, Isaac Khomo. He's our African analyst. He's not our African. He's not ready at the moment, unfortunately. Let's go. This is totally unrelated. Let's take a look at the question that we asked you yesterday. Of course, yesterday we dealt with mental illness in South Africa. Now, one in three South Africans suffer from mental illness. We asked you the question, what do you think of that? Unathi Grootboom said at Newsroom, we suffer a lot and we need to get help. Talking about mental health and hashtag mental illness. Kolani Wakazi says, Newsroom, yes, I agree. Some of them are bewitched. Not even Sangomas can heal them. Talking about mental illness in general. DeVoe Johnson says, regarding mental illness or other types of illness, not healed by man, but by giving your heart to the Lord and having faith. This one from DeVoe Johnson. Lechasa was of a view, we are all mentally ill, except that the degree of mental illness, I think he's saying, differs. That's a fair comment, Lechasa. What is mental illness is the question. And then Unati concludes by saying, yes, South Africans suffer many diseases, but I think humanity, it's a struggle for everyone, Unati. Everybody struggles, no matter how secure or comfortable they look. We all have personal struggles. And as we heard yesterday from SADC, you should go and get help. Help is around the corner. You can Google them. Now, let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from Ryan, and it's captioned, a nighttime image of the typhoon Lyrock. There you see it now, full screen. This, what you see in front of it is Japan, China, Japan, and South Korea as this typhoon moves in. The interesting thing for me, it's a nighttime picture, and if you look at the planet itself, it almost looks like, well, the entire seaboard looks like it's on fire. That's what we're doing to the planet. Also, of course, in the bottom there you can see the typhoon moving in, and of course it's causing a lot of concern there. Now let's take a look at our comment of the day. This one comes from Sam McKnight, who says, can it really be 19 years since you've been gone? Talking about Lady Di, to all of you that don't know. Princess Diana, I should say. A sad day, lit by the happy memories I have of the good times and your unforgettable smile. I can still hear your laughter. Hashtag Princess Diana. Of course, 19 years. 19 years. Time flies. Time flies. Do you remember where you were on that fateful day? Moving on, let's take a look at what's happening in the courts here in South Africa. We start in the Constitutional Court, which is set to hand down judgment in the case between Tawusa and Unitrans. Now, this after a 2010 case in which 94 Tawusa members were dismissed. The application is brought by the Transport and Allied Workers Union of South Africa. In its own right and on behalf of the employees, the respondent, Unitrans Fuel and Chemicals, they conduct the business of haulage and petroleum and gas in the road and freight industry. Now, can we go back to our top story? There's one in Gabon. Now, Isaac Homo is an African analyst, a man who has intimate knowledge of the workings of this country. A very good morning to you, Isaac. Thank you for being on. Thank you for making yourself available quickly.
Thank you for having me, mate.
Quickly tell us, Isaac, we see Parliament's on fire in Gabon. What is happening there, and are you surprised by the outcome?
Well, you see, Gabon is a very complex situation. The place basically, for the first time, there's been an opposition to the incumbent, who is Ali Bongo. And the incumbent is nobody but John Ping, the former chairman of the AU. Now, he has actually come up being a political figure in Gabon, but he comes from the same camp as Ali Bongo was. And you remember that Ali Bongo got his presidency from his father, Omar Bongo. So you find that there is a split in the ruling elite. But then there is more to it than just that split itself.
Isaac, tell us a little bit about the Bongo family. They've been, of course, said to have ruled the Gabon for the last 50 years. Tell us about them and a little bit about the stability of this country.
The Bongo family actually, Omar Bongo came over and took over power when the first prime minister, I don't forget the president, I just forgot his name, when he actually sort of passed on. But he came there as a junior officer, but he came there as an implant of the French. The French have got a special relationship with its former colonies, especially with Gabon. At that time, Gabon was the first French-speaking country which had oil. And there were deals with the oil firms where the French have controlled the oil in Gabon. And further to that, the French have got a military which is based in Gabon. There was a time when, with Omar Bongo's rule, there was a rebellion which overthrew Omar Bongo, but the French came and reinstated him. So you find that the French have got a strong hold of Gabon. Yeah, and Omar Bongo was the chief of the French Afrique group within Africa. And he used to actually finance the French political movement. Nothing could happen in Gabon without French authority, and it's so until today. Now, you find that with the death of Omar Bongo, the French and also the ruling elite, they took the son and put him in power just to continue with the legacy of a centralized power structure. But with time, Omar Bongo has been falling away from the French, defying them on certain issues, economic issues and regional issues as such. Yeah, so now you find that the Jean Ping, yeah, he has been groomed by the French when he left the AU. He has been groomed by the French. He is, in fact, before the elections, he had spent a long time in France, meeting the authorities there and getting their blessing. And he came back. But in general, the Gabonese people are tired of the centralized rule of one group or one peak. Yeah, you can say that it's not a dictatorship because Omar Bongo, he actually had what you call a multi-party system. But he used the issue of paternalism, whereby with the funds that he got from the oil business, he actually corrupted the opposition. In fact, at times of elections, he used to sponsor parties, just to split the opposition. Gabon is a country of about 2 million people. Yet in that situation, you've got a political scene with about 50 to 60 to 70 parties. And the very powerful groups will actually sort of form these groups so that they could be co-opted into the ruling elite. They would be made ministers, they would be made managers of companies, they would be made ambassadors. So that has been the situation in Gabon. But this time you find that the ruling elite, the political elite, there's a split where the French want to do away with Ali Bongo.
Isaac, thank you very much for that update. That's African analyst, of course, works with Channel Africa, an expert on African politics. That's producer, senior producer, actually, Isaac Como, giving us an update as to what is happening or what the situation is in Gabon following election violence. Of course, we're asking you the question today. HIV treatment for all from today. That's the 1st of September. Is this the answer? We're asking you. 3 million people already on antiretroviral treatment in South Africa. The biggest rollout in the world, on the planet, that is. Of course, today starts a new phase. Everybody now qualifies. If you test positive, you qualify. How do you view this? And he says the answer at SABC Newsroom is where you can send us your contribution. It's spring day. It's a happy day. You should smile today. We're going to take a short break. We come back. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, vandalism and cable theft and how we deal with these issues here in South Africa.
No, they haven't.
Do you know why?
Well, we didn't know. Firstly, we'll ask.
I can tell you.
Why?
They say you're selling out.
Why?
Well, I guess that's a question you need to engage them.
Why would the African Union try and separate human rights and women's rights?
Women's rights are indeed human rights.
So we need to be asking ourselves, what kind of society are we? What kind of family structures do we have where fathers turn on their daughters?
If a policeman, is seen to be accessing psychological services, couldn't that be seen as a sign of weakness?
People are waiting for somebody to discover them.
Absolutely.
And that's not everybody's story, am I right? I mean, there's so many of us who can be the best and stars, but you can't sit there and wait for somebody to say, I think what you're doing is great.
Which are so different to his past.
I really wish I could say thanks to him. And mind you, I'm the man. I make coffee and I'm proud of it.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Hello again. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, the war against cable theft and vandalism is well on here in South Africa. In 2007, the city of Cape Town established the Copperheads, an elite task team of specially trained officers whose role was to combat the theft of non-ferrous metals. The team works closely with the Non-Ferrous Theft Combating Committee, a forum involving the SAPS, Business Against Crime, Eskom, Spoornet, Telkom, Metrorail and other industry role players. Now, the latest victim of vandalism has been Telkom South Africa. This week, services in the Limpopo area suffered a serious network failure following acts of sabotage on the company network in the Polokwane area. More than 50,000 customers, including business, were affected. Last week, more than 6,000 telephone and internet customers were cut off around the capital, Pretoria. Now in Cape Town, we are joined by the acting chief of the Metal Theft Unit, Yul Coleman. Very good morning to you, Yul. Thank you for joining us today on Newsroom.
Good morning, Evan. Thank you.
Yul, just give us a quick overview of metal theft, cable theft, non-ferrous metal theft, whatever we call it these days. What does the picture look like in South Africa? Is it as bad as we're being told?
Yes, definitely. This is a global phenomenon, cable theft. The unit was established in 2007, and it was initially called the copper cable unit. Unfortunately, we've seen that not only the copper was targeted, it was all other types of metal. And based on that, we changed the name to the Metal Theft Unit, also known as the Copperheads of the City of Cape Town. Now, we've been in existence now for 9 years, and we had quite a few successes with regards to arrests and confiscations that we made over these years.
Just paint us a picture of the problem that you're facing with in Cape Town. We understand that metals, they're quite popular for drug addicts in and around the city to target metal specifically to feed their drug habits. What is the problem like, and what are the institutions that are affected, especially in the mother city?
Okay, you know that we are dependent on also recyclers. They are important in our communities. But unfortunately, we sit with the situation in Cape Town specifically where there's informal scrap dealers that operate, that are issued with certificates from the South African Police Services, which operate still illegally in terms of the land use ordinance. However, we target the market to ensure that we try to deter them from buying in stolen items. And we understand also that it's all drug related, yes. However, this is a challenge in our communities where the people have an easy set-off. And this is the target area that we focus on. Obviously, we also monitor our legal scrapyards at the same time. But said that, currently SABC is the custodian of the Second-Hand Goods Act. We are in the process of discussing, in fact, we had discussions with SABC with regard to the Second-Hand Goods Act and extension of powers to the Metal Theft Unit, City of Cape Town exclusively. We're just awaiting the minister's sign-off. Then soon we will be able to also exercise the Second-Hand Goods Act in full power.
Now, we understand, of course, that yes, it's drug-related, and there are the individuals, the little guy that goes out and commits the crimes. But what about the big players, the syndicates, the guys who take the stuff offshore and who really reap the big benefits?
Okay, there obviously we need to involve the Special Investigations Unit of the SAPS and also the Hawks. That is what we also call the white-collar crime. Unfortunately, in our situation, we deal mostly with the bread and butter thief. That is what we call them in Cape Town. The guy's trying to make a living, he's unemployed, and most of our vandalism and theft take place in the informal settlement areas or areas that is close to our informal settlement areas or lower rate income people. So, but nevertheless, we are dealing with them. Unfortunately, the syndicates there, that is the SAP's responsibility to do it on that high-level investigations.
Do you think it's an idea maybe going forward for us to classify copper as a precious metal and then, of course, bigger punishments come with that? Do you think that will be a deterrent?
Okay, unfortunately, we cannot classify it as a precious metal. It must be in its raw state. Unlike gold, they deal with gold, you know. They smuggle with gold in its unraw state. This is unfortunately not the situation with copper. Copper is refined, so it's in a refined condition. So you cannot classify it as a precious metal. However, I'm excited about the new Criminal Matters Amendment Bill, which came into effect earlier this year. We recently arrested 5 gentlemen for tampering with our essential infrastructure. So we are in the process now. We've detained the suspects at the police station. They are appearing now in court. We are awaiting now the outcome of that.
In conclusion, what would you like to see happening going forward with the individual, with the resource itself, and also with the authorities and then the stakeholders?
Yes. Obviously, collaboration is the key word here. We need to work together to fight the crime. However, I would like to see also that our judicial system also take this serious. Even if they steal a meter of copper, it still affects a whole community. However, I'm excited to see the outcome of the Criminal Matters Amendment Bill that we charge the suspects on, to see, because the amendment bill actually tells us that you can receive a maximum of 30 years imprisonment sentence, and that is what we would like to see in future. And we also, in excitement, awaiting the extension of our powers in terms of the Second Goods Act, and then we will also have more bite within the city.
Yul, thank you for joining us today. That's the Acting Chief of the Metal Theft Unit in Cape Town, Yul Coleman, coming to talk to us about this scourge that's not only in Cape Town, but all over the country. Telkom has been suffering massively. The whole of Polokwane, more than 50,000 people affected in the last couple of days alone. So it's a problem. Metal theft, specifically copper theft, around South Africa. Of course, one of the top stories today is what's happening in Gabon. I can confirm now that 2 people were killed and more than a dozen injured as Gabon security forces stormed the opposition's headquarters earlier today. This as violence swept the capital after the incumbent President Ali Bongo was declared the winner of contested polls there. Of course, he was running against Jean Ping, who we also knew ran against Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma for the AU Commission chairpersonship. But let's take a look at some of the comments and some of the pictures on social media, mind you, coming out of Gabon. Elizabeth Mwende says, Gabon, we must change leadership in Africa and refuse the hallmark of dictators and tyrants who refuse to give up power. Isn't that all too familiar a story? Kenny Priss says, don't believe that it's not your fight, fellow African brother. Today, it's not you, but if you don't say anything tomorrow, it will. Wise words there. Dennis Ayua Joshua says, I'm with you in prayers, people of Gabon. You bring back sad memories of 2007-8 in my country, Kenya. Wish you come of it better. Pray for Gabon, he says. And here are some of the pictures that people are putting up. There you see, that's the Houses of Parliament, of course, on the same road. The French embassy and a whole lot of other international embassies are. That's the parliament that was set on fire. There you see that. Here are some of the, well, gut-wrenching pictures that are coming out. People being arrested, people protesting, not happy. This one from Latia saying, Gabon main cities are burning. And here you see another picture. That looks like a minibus taxi being set set alight in the capital, some cars being set alight, and here you see general pictures of protest. That's the picture coming out of Gabon right now. It's very disturbing pictures. Let's take a quick look at what you can get on Newsroom's Facebook page this morning. Of course, one of South Africa's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, has stopped lending money to 6 of the country's largest state-owned companies. Also, as you saw there, demonstrators in Gabon clashing with police and set part of the Parliament building on fire late yesterday as anger boiled over amongst opposition supporters at President Ali Bongo's re-election in polls that his main rival, Jean Ping, claimed to have won as well. Then Brazil's Senate ousted President Dilma Rousseff yesterday, ending an impeachment process that polarized Latin America's biggest country amid a massive corruption scandal and brutal economic crisis. You can find all of that and a little bit more on Facebook. Well, you're watching Newsroom. We'll be back shortly with a little bit more around what is happening around copper theft, cable theft in South Africa. Don't go on.
He appealed for the disruptions to come to an end so the future of the children is not compromised.
The union said the latest offer by Eskom will condemn its members to poverty.
Samples from the 2012 London Olympic Games and 2014 Sochi Winter Games will also be retested.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, last week, Telkom increased the reward for information leading to the arrest and prosecution of saboteurs targeting the facilities. Their facilities, that is, they increased that to R1 million. This after its network infrastructure has come under siege in various provinces. Now, Telkom states that it has experienced an increase in acts of sabotage on its networks since members of the Communication Workers Union went on strike. More than 60 street distribution cabinets have been damaged in the past few weeks and fibre and copper cables have been cut. Limpopo reported a serious network failure when fibre cables were cut, affecting over 50,000 people. Telkom says its technicians are working around the clock in order to bring affected areas back online. The company also called on its employees and members of the public to provide any information leading to the identification and arrest of what they call saboteurs. Now, Telkom has confirmed that cables in a number of cities, including parts of the capital, Pretoria, were damaged in the past week, interrupting telephone and internet link to about 6,000 people there as well. They've also put the blame, well, on the doorstep of striking CWU union members. They say, but the union, mind you, have denied involvement in this alleged sabotage of several network facilities across the country. The dispute between Telkom and the union stems from a failure between both parties to reach an agreement this year over performance incentives as well as an annual salary increase. Now, I can tell you that we've asked Telkom to come. They said they would come and talk to us, but at the last minute they've pulled out without giving us any excuse really. They've just pulled a no-show. Now, to talk to us about the strike and the accusations of the, well, vandalism and attack on infrastructure. We are joined by the first Deputy President of the Communications Workers Union, Sontaga Mantlaka. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Very serious allegations that Telkom is making about your members attacking them. What do you say to that?
No, they must come with a proof that our members are sabotaging their network. But from where we are sitting, it's about their contractors. In Limpopo last week, they arrested one of the contractors sabotaging their network. This week, 2 Zimbabwe nationals were arrested in Limpopo as well. But out of that, no one from our members that was arrested. So if they are saying CW, they must come with a proof, but must indicate that.
Yeah, there's also, yes, you say proof, but there's also common sense. And common sense for someone like me who investigates these kinds of things, it says to me, it cannot be a coincidence that during this strike, Telkom's infrastructure is being vandalized. Not a little bit, a lot. More than 70,000, 80,000 people are being affected by a considered assault on this. Surely you can't tell us it's a coincidence.
Now, when we go to the townships in the country, there's no cables at all. It has been stolen from long ago. Obviously,
no. This went offline in the last 24 to 48 hours. You can't say that from long ago the cables are up down.
Let's go to the township today.
No, we're talking about specifically what's happening in the capital, Pretoria, and what is happening in Polokwane. In the last week alone, there's been massive damage that's been caused to Telkom infrastructure, and it all coincides with the strike.
What I'm saying to you is that it's not started today when we are on strike. It started long ago. As I'm saying, when you go to most of the areas, the cable has been stolen throughout. When we look at some areas, even before we go for a strike, every day, the cable is stolen. We can't say today because we are on strike is because of course the strike. That's why we're saying, if you are saying it's a sabotage, you must give us evidence.
Okay, so if it's sabotage, you maintain your position officially is there must be proof.
Yeah, they must prove and arrest those who are sabotaging.
Okay. What do you say about that?
That's why the reward started from 250,000.
It's now $1 million.
Now it's $1 million because they cannot able to find those who are sabotaging from us. But those allegations are always going out. But we say to the company, they must come and show us. What they wanted from us is to say it must write to the structures of the organization to say they must not, because we're a peaceful organization.
You are peaceful, and obviously you have the best interest of South African consumers at heart.
Sure.
Now, are you then prepared to work with Telkom to try and find these perpetrators?
Yeah, of course. If we know, we can able to tell them that these are the people who are supporting our network. Because that company is not only for Telkom, it's ours as well. We've got interest in that company. We want that company to grow because it's looking after our bread and butter issues.
Now, quickly, let's go to the labor dispute, because I think that's where we can kind of find alignment quickly. What's the latest with the dispute? And is there willingness from all parties now to get past this impasse?
We're always willing to engage with the company as long as they are putting something on the table. We met with the company yesterday. They made their own proposals, but they don't want to move on the guarantee increase. They are stuck on the performance base, which is not pensionable. So we're saying, we told them that we'll take that back to our members. Already we got the report from members, even though it's not complete. They are rejecting that offer. What they want is an increase. You can't justify when the CEO got an increase of 2.4 million and said the workers will not get increase.
That's the position. Let's quickly talk about vandalism before we wrap up. I just want to, you know that the infrastructure, the damage is around 7 billion rand. And yes, some of it is, as you pointed out, is a long-standing problem. It's nothing. It's nothing new. Just give us a quick overview. What would you like to see happen?
No, I want us to finalize our dispute. They must meet the demand of the workers, so that we must go back and service our customers in the country at large.
I thank you for joining us today and putting us into the picture what is happening in the dispute with Telkom. Of course, we just have to point out to you, the viewers, that we've invited Telkom to come here. We've invited them to come and deal with the issue of vandalism, but also talk to us about what is happening with the labour dispute. They decided at the last minute to pull out of the interview. You can decide for yourself what that is. Anyhow, moving on, one of South Africa's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, has stopped lending money to 6 of the country's largest state-owned companies. It's causing quite a lot of consternation in the market. Let's have a look at what are some of the views. You guys kill me says, why do we even bother complaining about anything political? Talking about the hashtag Future Growth. Ross Pennell says, first the South African banks, now Future Growth does the government's job of promoting good governance and making a stand against mismanagement. Zenzele says, this hashtag Future Growth is acting like the rating agencies. They want to impose their people in SOEs now. We are under assault indeed, says Zenzele. And then Andile Matala says, Future Growth decision not to finance 6 SOEs not convincing, given distinct governance and risk profiles for each SOE. The hashtag there is interesting, is capitalist negligence. Let's take a quick look at what's happening on the front pages from around the world right now. We'll start in New York. The Financial Times reports that President Dilma Rousseff was stripped of her office yesterday in the culmination of a political crisis that has left Latin America's largest nation adrift, with an economy in deep recession and a public sharply divided over the country's future. Down under in Australia, the Daily Telegraph says a 4-year-old is receiving special assistance to undergo a gender transition amid explosion in the number of young children considering sex changes. Very interesting. Preschooler. Then in Iran, the Iran Daily reports that imports of Iranian oil by 4 major buyers in Asia jumped in July by 61.1% from a year earlier, marking the biggest percentage gain since April 2014, reflecting Tehran's eye-catching moves to regain market share lost during the period of international sanctions that the country went through. Now, last night at midnight, the football transfer window closed. There were a few surprises. One of them was the former Chelsea and Brazil defender David Luiz, who left Paris, came back from Paris, really, that's from Paris Saint-Germain, to go back to Chelsea. But before we go overseas, let's take a look at what happened right here at home. Now, Anele Ngonga coming back from Genk to play for Sundowns, another big signing for Sundowns. Kendall Mahamati is here. What do you make of that return? Sundowns are a team that's very much flying now. They're bringing a player in with more European experience. Nobody's going to catch them here. Nobody's going to catch him.
One of the interesting things about Anele is people, yes, you're right, you haven't seen him play in the PSL because he never has. He left straight from the NFD, he could go 2007, some 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He left to go play in Europe, and he's been there since. And it seems like Peter Msimana's intent and making sure that the team makes a massive statement going forward, and that's why he's bringing Ngonga back from Europe. And I tell you what, a lot of people are looking forward to see what this young man is going to do.
That was the marquee move on the local
100%.
Scene in the transfer window, as it were.
100%. Yeah, there's also 1 or 2 other moves afoot. I mean, there was one about Sfiso Mieni leaving Pirates, going back to Wits, because a very different vibe for him between the 2 clubs. But a big one that happened just before the closing of the transfer window was Tefuma Shamaite. Yeah. He was the players play. In fact, he did almost a clean sweep 2 years ago.
He won Chiefs the League, man.
He won Chiefs the League, Players Player of the Year. Yeah. He was the Premiership Player of the Year.
That was the worst bit of business ever done in the history of South African football, was to, after winning the league, you sell what was probably the best performance by a defender in recent times in South African football.
100%.
And then Chiefs just fell apart after that.
And they fell apart, but it's not all about him, isn't it? But he's come back, and he wasn't gone for very long. He's come back. He's rejoining his former coach, Stuart Baxter, but this time at SuperSport United. And very interesting move that. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, back to David Luiz. Very interesting stuff there that is going back to Chelsea. He was sold for a record transfer of £50 million.
Yeah, good bit of business there, innit?
Very good business. Very good business, and brought back. And interesting enough, Sissoko as well. He's also...
Yeah, Mr. Sissoko is an interesting one for me. Yeah. There was a bit of tug-of-war between Everton and Spurs late last night. And Spurs won out, but I think it's maybe more like London won out over Liverpool in
100%.
In this case.
I'd agree with you there.
The big name international players, they'd rather live in London. It's a nice city.
Yeah.
Let's quickly talk about, I want to talk about Dale Steyn quickly, back to world number one. It's fantastic news for South Africa to have Dale Steyn back, but can one say that he's truly back, or is it going to be a case of him having to go to Australia and knock Australia over in order to truly take over the mantle once again?
I think one can actually, the hints of him being back, because he hasn't done this in a while. A 5-4, he hasn't pulled that one off, regardless where he was playing.
One swallow don't make a summer, they say.
Oh, that is true. That is true. But you know what? They also say, I won't say it because we're keeping it clean. I do believe, I do believe though that he does need to go to Australia. He does need to prove it there as well. But I'll tell you what, him, Vernon Philander, Kagiso Rabada in the attack, like I said yesterday,
4-pronged pace attack at Perth. I can't wait to see it.
Dangerous.
Let's talk about something that I think is one of the good news stories in South African sport. For many, many years, our national netball team has been the butt end of jokes. Now they are on the verge of being mentioned amongst in the same breath as the top three giants of world netball, and they put in some great performances against them the last week.
100%. Some people would know that they're already out in New Zealand. They're playing in the quadrangular series against the top nations in netball, and that's England, Australia, New Zealand, and they're doing very well. In fact, this match, which they ended up losing yesterday, they were leading. In the first quarter already they were leading. Second, like the end of the first half they were leading, and it was only 7 minutes from time that the opponents managed to catch up. So big stuff definitely afoot on the netball scene, South African netball scene, and it seems as if that the domestic league has done a long way towards getting them to that point where they're competitive internationally.
Time for us to then put more money into netball, isn't it?
I agree.
Thank you very much. Kendo Mahamate giving us his views on the world of sport. And all things, really. He has a view on many things, this guy. But another man who knows all too much, he's probably going to tell us it's not going to rain this spring, is Tsetse Monare. But I'll talk to him about that a little bit later. Tsetse, over to you with the weather.
A very good morning and welcome from the weather desk. So there's a lot of events happening here in South Africa today. A lot of people are celebrating Spring Day, but a lot of people in the Western Capes are also expecting really cool conditions and rainy weather towards the central parts of the Western Cape province, and also possibilities of that annular solar eclipse that's coming through. It's just around 11 or 2 minutes past 11. You should check it out here in Johannesburg. Not going to be as fantastic, but do go out and take a look. Rain towards Madagascar, definitely yes. Today, do expect those. And then hot weather for Gaborone, Pretoria, as well as Harare. But we cannot say the same about Cape Town. Cold weather is expected there. Only a maximum 14 degrees. And yes, it is going to be quite rainy along the southern coastal parts. Temperatures are expected to remain quite cool along those regions. Kampala, do expect a bit of rain. Kigali as well. And Yaoundé, possibilities of some severe thunderstorms there today. And even your Friday will come up with possibilities of heavy rainfall there. Look out for those going towards Bangui, as well as over the opposite end in towards South Sudan. A bit of rain is expected along those parts. So yeah, Central Africa, just below the Sahara Desert, yes, do expect rainy conditions. Addis Ababa is much cooler at 19 degrees. And I do expect hot weather for South Sudan. Juba 35, Mogadishu 28, Mombasa 27, and Kinshasa very hot at 36 degrees. Those conditions are expected to dominate just along the northeastern side of Africa. There's basically just the dry weather, clear conditions coming up there, no chance of rainfall. Temperature-wise are looking pretty good. Most of the temperatures are into the upper 30s, and it's going to continue so just for the next couple of days, and it will go just around the lower 40s for places such as Baghdad, as well as over the central regions of Mecca. You'll see 40 degrees there. Riyadh 49, very close to just a degree shy of 50 degrees. So yeah, it is scorching hot along those parts. Tripoli 38, sunny skies are expected there. Rainy weather towards N'Djamena as well as over Lagos. Definitely over Lagos. That's where you should expect rainy conditions. Even some parts of Accra in Ghana as well as over Abidjan. Over Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, do you expect rain this weekend? Yeah, it's not going to stop along Dakar in Senegal as well as over Bakau there in Gambia, so you do expect a bit of a wet one, definitely, but very hot and dry along the central parts. And then if you're going to be in Niamey, temperatures for you there, 38 degrees. N'Djamena is at 38 as well, and you expect 28 towards Abidjan. Lagos is at 29. That's basically where I'll leave it for you for the weather for now. Weather at sabc.co.za. If you've got any questions about when the seasons begin or when they supposed to end, or if you want to talk anything weather related, that's where you can discuss with us there. So you can also reach us on Twitter at SABC News Online. Otherwise, do enjoy the weather. There'll be more later.
Now, this is Trends, of course, your one-stop serving of all that's juicy and trending in the world of entertainment and showbiz. My name, of course, is Refill Wemwilo.
I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is our talk.
A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly.
My name is Dumila Matters.
William Mulabati.
My name is Mpo. What time is it? It's question time.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Africa is growing. As a result, it's also advancing the way it does things.
Any developments in technology can really do a lot to boost growth.
On Network, we'll show you how technology is improving the lives of Africans.
The life of an LED globe is 15 times longer than what they have currently.
We also have new gadgets, games, and the continent's innovative technology ideas. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 19:30 Central African Time.
For Spile, giving up was no option even in times of need.
If it wasn't for the opportunity that was given to me by the taxi owner, late Mr. Sibego, maybe I wouldn't be where I am.
The taxi industry is also occupied by people with a vision.
There are quite a few taxi drivers with at least matric. And they had a next door neighbor who owned taxis, and they asked him for a job.
He now owns a law firm, and he believes that challenges are meant to be conquered.
Once you step on top of them, you are able to be on another level, and they remain under your feet.
He says hard work granted him his dream of becoming a lawyer of note.
I don't really believe in miracles. People work.
Join Puleng Mulibati every Friday at 17:30.
Yeah, it's more of a validation. You know, it's more of like, okay, you're on it. Because it's been a dream and a goal from the beginning, like to get here.
The fact that the rest of the world is actually acknowledging the amount of work we put into, into music as Africa as a whole, I think it's fantastic. It's a big one for South Africa too.
The School of Ballet in Nigeria has changed many a mindset in dance.
Saw it a lot on TV, and we looked at it like something that probably could not be taught to us, because we thought it was like a white man dance, or probably something it's their culture now. But it actually taught me that it's not just about culture, because dance is a language.
For more arts and entertainment news, catch Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
everybody. Clark, yes, we're ready for another news update, but before we get there, let's just deal with, well, our top story and the question we've asked. Now, Kendall, it's an interesting day today because from today, AIDS, well, antiretrovirals will be available for everybody. So we've asked our viewers this question. There's been quite a bit of response with regards to this. HIV treatment for all. Is this the answer? What are people saying?
I think it's a great thing, and I think a lot of people are sharing the sentiment.
More than 3 million people are on antiretroviral treatment in South Africa already. Mbongi Nyati says...
That's the answer. Anyway, I must applaud the way President Zuma's administration and the Minister Motsoaledi is fighting this scourge.
Yeah, that's true. South Africa is a world leader in fighting this, the scourge, that is HIV/AIDS.
And this one coming in from Al Malachi says, prevention is better than cure. As far as South Africans are rated high people living with HIV, I think ARVs should be added as ingredients.
I do think that they're probably thinking, like, you know, make sure that it's in all the milk powder, make sure it's in the peanut butter, make sure it's there.
Okay, no, but people are smoking ARVs already. They're robbing patients and smoking them. Anyhow, Bonan Mapulanka says, Newsroom, test and treat. Once diagnosed, start the treatment. I support it. Yes, everybody gets treatment from today. That's been our question. Today. Keep it coming, of course. If you don't want to put up, well, send us your Spring Day picture. What are you doing for Spring Day? If you don't have a Spring Day picture, just send us a happy smile here at Newsroom or even on our Facebook page. But in the business of news, let's go to the news desk for Rene to give us our second update of the morning.
As from today, all people with HIV will have access to treatment upon diagnosis, irrespective of their CD4 count. One of South Africa's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, pulls a plug on some of the country's SOE's financial backing. And Gabon's parliament has been set on fire in ongoing protests after President Ali Bongo was declared the winner of the presidential polls. Now, before we get to that news, let's go over to Kendall with your sports update.
Renee, thank you very much. We just had a chat with the event just now. We touched a little bit on some of the big football transfers that happen around the world. And one of them actually happened for our domestic market. People are abuzz with Anele's move.
Yeah, very happy to see some of our top players coming back. I was hopeful for Stephen Pienaar to come back, but he, of course, signed another big pound deal for Sunderland. Hopefully he'll come and play next year. It'll be too late for Pirates' anniversary year, though.
Yeah, not true that. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves talking about transfers, let's bring it back to the headlines. This is what we've got for you headline-wise for today. The football transfer window closed at midnight last night, and really the big signing on everyone's lips in South Africa is Anele Ngonga's return from Europe to join Mamelodi Sundowns.
Oh, straight up! He's left it alone and it's gone onto his stumps. He was expecting it to go across him, and first delivery, Dale Steyn strikes.
The Palaburo Express, Dale Steyn, underlines his bowling supremacy as he reclaims his crown as the top test bowler in the world.
Natal Quintana needs the win for the time bonus, but Froome is opening up a gap, and Froome is showing himself to be the favourite to win the race overall as he repeats 2011.
And the two top riders in La Vuelta, Froome and Quintana, go wheel to wheel in the last climb. Froome wins the stage, but Quintana holds on to the leader's jersey. Of course, something very topical right now is transformation in cricket, especially with everything that's been going on and off the field. I'll be chatting to Busiso Mjeli, so great writer in a couple of minutes' time, at about 10:40 or so. Be sure to stick around. But for now, it's back to Renee, who's got the news.
Thank you very much, Kendall. Starting from today, all people with HIV will begin treatment upon diagnosis, irrespective of their CD4 count. This is in line with the World Health Organization's new HIV guideline, which says every HIV-positive person should be initiated on treatment immediately after diagnosis. Previously, treatment was started after a person's CD4 count dropped below 500. South Africa has the world's largest HIV treatment program with over 3 million people on antiretrovirals. Deputy Director for HIV and AIDS in the National Health Department, Dr. Jürgen Pillay, says the country can't afford not to treat patients. Economists say the move by SA's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, is a show of no confidence in the state enterprises and the state as a whole. Future Growth has stopped lending money to 6 of the country's largest state-owned companies temporarily. These include Eskom, Transnet, Sunroll, the Land Bank, the IDC and the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Future Growth says the decision was informed by perceived poor leadership in these institutions. Wits University professor Tsepo Mongalo says the decision by Future Growth is a sound warning to government to better manage state-owned enterprises. Some economists say some of these state companies run a risk of possible liquidation. The rand is currently reflecting market concerns about state-owned entities, institutions and political risk in South Africa. And a fixed-income asset manager, Future Growth, now says it has halted lending to some state-owned companies. While earlier, Eskom hit back at the Treasury following claims it did not cooperate with an investigation into coal contracts. CEO Brian Molefe has also defended the power utility's dealings with Gupta-owned Tegeta Exploration and Resources, saying that if he has been captured, it's by the Constitution. Eskom was before the Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee.
A day to report on financials, but it soon turned into a mini inquiry into the relationship between Eskom and Tegeta, and the power utility also dismissed any suggestions of capture.
This campaign to kill trust in Eskom, to actually portray us as if we are committed or we are bought or we are captured, is nonsense.
Perhaps I'm captured, but I'm captured by the Constitution.
The power utility also rejected suggestions that it blocked a Treasury investigation into Tegeta.
Our understanding was that after it has been considered by the board, it will be sent to the National Treasury. There was no attempt on our part not to comply.
Eskom also moved to defend coal supplies by Tegeta, saying they were above board, and also defended a 500 million rand advance given to Tegeta, saying this is a normal commercial practice. Capital expenditure by mining companies amounts to 38 billion rand.
The capital expenditure that are required by these mines, obviously the bill for that is footed by Eskom. So we basically make an upfront payment to them in terms of the capital requirements for those mines.
Brian Molefe occasionally took swipes at Treasury, saying they should have summoned him to make a warning statement if Treasury felt Eskom was not cooperating with the Tegeta investigation. Molefe says Treasury approved tender deviations for Tegeta.
The Treasury itself approved a deviation for Korenfontein mine on the 17th of August. Perhaps the Guptas have also captured the Treasury.
The committee is considering calling Eskom back to a joint meeting with the Treasury. This is in order to resolve the contradicting statements between the Treasury and Eskom. Ulilani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
National Treasury says it will not comment publicly on Denel's statement. South Africa's aerospace and defence company issued a statement last night lambasting Treasury for its threat to bring court action to stop the Denel Asia joint venture. It says the move is political, sheer opportunism and grandstanding, but it welcomes Public Enterprise Minister Lynn Brown's call to talk through how best to resolve all the state-owned enterprise issues. Denel says it served Treasury with a pre-notification of its intention to establish Denel Asia in October 2015, but claims Treasury never raised any objections. Denel says it was only when the name of the Guptas was linked to Denel Asia that National Treasury sent a letter to request further information from the company. The company says allegations that it's captured by the Guptas are unfounded and politically motivated. It insists the Gupta family has no business or joint venture with Denel, and none of the Gupta family members or relatives are shareholders in Denel Asia. The company says Treasury's threat of litigation will be a violation of Chapter 3 of the Constitution, and it intends to vigorously oppose it. The Passenger Rail Service Agency has told a media briefing in Cape Town that it will implement a turnaround strategy in October to address challenges that it has tarnished its image. These include, among others, dealing with internal problems and vandalism of its infrastructure. The state-owned agency has recently been in the news for all the wrong reasons, including billions spent on irregular expenditure and dodgy tenders.
We aim to ensure that we increase our revenue by reducing fare evasion. We aim to ensure that we do a bit of realignment of our structures internally to ensure that we have got controls and that our supply chain management processes are intact and they are working.
Further afield, protesters have set fire to Gabon's parliament after President Ali Bongo was declared the winner of Saturday's presidential poll. Thousands of people took to the streets after the announcement and accused the government of stealing the election. At least 6 people have been admitted to hospital with bullet wounds. Several of the wounded said they were shot by security forces. The parliament lies on the same road as the state TV headquarters, several embassies and the French Cultural Centre. According to official results, Bongo won the poll by taking 49% of the vote to 48% for his rival Jean Ping. The Department of International Relations has asked South African citizens to stay indoors. The 36th Ordinary Summit of SADC concluded its work today, calling on member states to finalize consultations and facilitate the approval of Industrialization Action Plan. South Africa was elected as the next host by the 15 heads of state at the 2-day summit.
The summit approved the agreement on the setting up of the SADC Regional Development Fund and urged member states to urgently ratify the agreement in order to facilitate the mobilization of resources to finance key regional projects and programs, this giving further impetus to preparation of infrastructure and industrialization projects.
There is a need for the region to intensify resource mobilization efforts in order to become a strong economic bloc. To have such a bloc is important if our continental vision of creating infrastructure that will enhance cooperation and integration is to be realized.
Member states were urged to finalize consultations on the industrial strategy.
We took a decision to industrialize is because we are very convinced, all of us, that we need to change the manner in which we deal with our economies. Our economies must be able to produce jobs, they must be able to grow the economy, and this must also lead us to a situation where countries are not dependent on other countries in totality or a lot.
The summit, among other things, expressed concern on the emergence of pockets of negative forces in the eastern DRC. It urged political parties and all other stakeholders to create a conducive environment for elections. It encouraged the government of Lesotho to continue implementing SADC decisions. The summit noted the overall deterioration of the regional food supply situation caused by El Nino drought. This has left over 39 million people requiring both food and other humanitarian assistance. Lehana Tsoteti, SABC News, Lozita, Swaziland.
In international news, Brazilians are divided over the impeachment of leftist leader Dilma Rousseff. They have demonstrated both against and in her favor after a majority of senators voted for her to be stripped of the presidency. Rousseff's opponents have hailed her removal, while her supporters say their votes to keep her in power have been wasted. 61 of 81 senators convicted the country's first female president of illegally manipulating the national budget. She was accused of using money from state banks to bankroll public spending. The impeachment brings an end to 13 years of leftist Workers' Party rule. Congress has sworn in the conservative Michel Temer to serve the remainder of the presidential term to 2018. Venezuela's opposition and government are headed into a crucial test of strength today, with massive marches for and against a referendum to recall President Nicolas Maduro. The opposition blames Maduro's policies for the country's economic crisis and has been for months trying to get the recall scheduled. Maduro has vowed to jail opposition leaders if they incite violence at upcoming protests. Our Latin American correspondent, Juan Carlos Rivas Lamas, filed this report.
For months now, Venezuelans have been getting up before dawn to wait in line to get into grocery stores and pharmacies that often have no basic food items or basic medicines on the shelves. With the plunge in the price of oil, the people of this oil-rich nation are struggling to live with skyrocketing inflation, rolling power blackouts, and water rationing. The crisis has reached across borders, where thousands of Venezuelans have crossed into neighboring Colombia in search of food and other basic staples. The police and the army plan to be out in full force at the march, but the opposition has vowed not to back down. As for many here, ousting President Nicolas Maduro is a first step towards pulling Venezuela out of its current economic and political crisis.
And finally, the first regular commercial flight in 55 years from the United States to Cuba has landed in Santa Clara after a flight from Fort Lauderdale. It's the latest step between the two nations to try and boost ties.
You could say it was a flight that took more than half a century. A JetBlue passenger jet lands in the central Cuban city of Santa Clara Wednesday. The flight opened another chapter in the Obama administration's effort to improve ties and increase trade and travel with the former Cold War foe.
It's a huge moment. So many families. I was just meeting with some of the passengers on the plane. One gentleman had been born here, hadn't been back for 60 years, and he's reconnecting with his family, and it's just amazing.
Here we are today celebrating this historic first flight, and this is just the beginning. I look forward to growing our service here in the years to come.
Fox also met with Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez. Cuba and the United States began normalizing relations in December 2014. That's after 18 months of secret talks and have since restored full diplomatic ties. The countries had been hostile for more than 5 decades. Now, another chapter closes, with the Obama administration hoping regular scheduled flights will help usher in a new era.
That's your top news for this hour. Let's go over to Eben, who will continue one of the popular stories of the week on the alleged racism and hair debacle.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rene. Very good morning if you've just joined us. It's a story that's caused a lot of discomfort here in South Africa, if one could call it that. The Basic Education Department here says the legislation on schools' conduct will now be reviewed to ensure that discriminatory policies are not put in place to govern schools. This comes after incidents of alleged racism were reported at various schools. Learners at the Pretoria High School for Girls staged a protest after accusing school management of mistreating black learners with natural hair, dreadlocks or braids, as well as instructing them to not speak their mother tongues or in vernacular languages. Now, incidents of alleged racism have also spread to some schools in Port Elizabeth and Bloemfontein. Now, to talk to us a little bit more about schools' conduct and what's been going on the last week, we are joined by the Department of Basic Education spokesperson, Elijah Mklanga. Very good morning, Elijah. Thanks for being with us.
Morning. Thank you.
It's been an interesting week for you guys, hasn't it?
It has. It has.
Just tell me quickly, were you surprised by what came out and how this thing mushroomed, or have you as a department always been aware that there's been some undercurrent in certain pockets around the country?
Even we were surprised that it got to that point where learners mobilized, organized themselves, and staged a protest of that nature. That to us was a concern because it indicates that their concerns and their frustrations were not given a platform to be expressed. That means whatever they might have reported before the protest was not taken seriously. So to us, that was an issue that came as a huge surprise.
Is racism a problem in schools in and around South Africa still?
From what we saw in that school, it does show that there is discrimination taking place because the code of conduct is not applied in the same way across all the learners of the different racial groups. And the reports that we're listening to from those learners who were reporting different things, not being allowed to speak their languages on the school premises, while others from other racial groups were allowed to do so. That did not sound good, but also the fact that they had been trying to report this to school management and not much was done to try take care of their frustrations and give them a remedy to the situation. That also gave us an indication that there was something terribly wrong in that school that needed to be addressed by the school management.
Now, what is the way forward now with regards to codes of conduct and school governing bodies?
You know, what we realize is that it's not so much the codes of conduct. When you read most of these booklets, you realize that there is nothing wrong with them. But what is wrong is the treatment that learners are exposed to in the school, the things that are being said against them, the language that is being used. You can see that here there are adults who are abusing children. And the children, when they raise their frustrations, when they raise their concerns about what is taking place, they are not being listened to. So that is what you have. Is you have an attitude problem from some of the people who are tasked with implementing the codes of conduct. You find that when you read the booklets, they comply with the law, they comply with the Constitution, but the implementation thereof is not appropriate. And we realize that that is really something that we need to pay attention to. And we are going to do everything that we can as a department to ensure that we make the necessary amendments to the system to strengthen governance and to ensure that schools do the right thing.
Now after this review, how do you make sure that schools adhere to the shift in policy, if one can call it that?
Well, the situation will be fixed if parents take an active interest in the affairs of the schools, in the affairs of their children, because that's one weakness that we've realized, because you find that in the schools where these incidents are happening, you find that the demographics are such that blacks are more than white kids, for example. But you find that the SGB is completely white, and you ask yourself, how did that happen that a predominantly black school has an SGB that is predominantly white?
Yeah.
That means parents are not standing up for election, they are not electing others to represent their interests, and the situation happens to end up in a situation as we've seen in Pretoria, in Bloemfontein, as well as PE. And that's something that we really need to do, to try urge our parents to pay more attention to what their kids are saying, pay more attention to how the school is administered, and make sure that you stay very close to how the school is doing and how the school is being managed, so that if there are issues that you need to attend to, you're able to do so very, very quickly.
I've got a personal story that I want to share with you, because it's on a similar sort of thing. My son is at Northcliffe High. He's a soccer player, plays in the Wits Academy, loves football, always carries a football with him. He's not allowed to take the soccer ball onto the school premises. They're not allowed to play soccer on the school. On the school premises. The school doesn't offer soccer. It's one of the top sports schools for rugby, athletics and cricket and all the like, but they're not allowed to play soccer, even play soccer or bring a soccer ball onto the school premises. What is that? How do you, what do you tell me? What must I do about that?
Perhaps I should ask you if you were present when that code of conduct was done, or if you ever read.
No, this is a code of, I've investigated with the school what it is, and this has been school policy, and we've got a band of parents that have raised it with the principal, and they refuse to budge on this.
It cannot be that they refuse, because remember, whatever the school is doing cannot exclude the needs and the interests of the parents. The school has to make sure that it protects and promotes the interest of the learners and their parents, but the parents must be there to make sure that the right decisions that will protect their children are taken. The interests of the children must be taken on board. So here, I always say it's a numbers game. When it comes to this, it's a numbers game. To what extent do you mobilize your fellow parents to vote against that particular policy? If you don't do anything about it, the minority will always dictate to the majority.
Elijah, you're telling me I must go and toy outside the school. I'm going to do that, my friend. If I get into any trouble, I'm going to mention your name. I'm saying that now because that is all that is left for me to do is to maybe burn something and toy.
Not exactly. It must be discussed in a constructive manner. What we are saying is that we need to review. We need a constant review of the policies that we have because life evolves and things change. So we need to make sure that our rules and regulations are also in keeping with how things are done now. For example, if there are more kids in that school that need soccer, parents must make sure that a decision is taken that soccer is offered and that children are allowed to play soccer during breaks or even before schools can start, because that's what will make the kids to want to come to school, stay in the school until they finish their education. So we cannot have a situation where the environment is against the interests of the kids, particularly if it's something as constructive as physical activity.
Well, in a nutshell, that sounds perfect, but we don't live in a nutshell, Elijah. Thank you very much for joining us today. Elijah Mklanga is the Department of Basic Education spokesperson. It's been a very interesting week with regards to basic education in South Africa, the rights of learners, and learners taking a stand against what they call discrimination. Thanks, Elijah. Always nice to have you with us. Time for us now to take a short break. We'll be back with more on Newsroom right after this.
Yeah, it's more of a validation, you know, it's more of like, okay, you're on it, because it's been a dream and a goal from the beginning, like to get here.
The fact that the rest of the world is actually acknowledging the amount of work we put into, into music as Africa as a whole, I think it's fantastic. It's a big one for South Africa too.
The School of Ballet in Nigeria has changed many a mindset in dance.
Saw it a lot on TV and we looked at it like something that probably could not be taught to us because we thought it was like a white man dance or probably something it's their culture now, but it actually taught me that it's not just about culture because dance is a language.
For more arts and entertainment news, catch Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. A little bit earlier we spoke about, well, the issues around vandalism and cable theft here in South Africa. Now let's continue with that story. Cable theft, it doesn't only affect South Africa, but as you heard, it's a worldwide problem. Now in 2007, the crime received attention and a training program together with the Metal Theft Unit were established. We spoke to them a little bit earlier. Now, Rens Binderman from the Southern African Revenue Protection Association produced a training manual combating cable theft with the help, of the South African Police Service. Now, Binderman is currently in Nigeria to train them on how to combat metal theft in that country. Fortunately, he joins us via Skype from Nigeria today. A very good morning to you, Rens. Thank you for making time for us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Rens, you've been in Nigeria for a couple of days. Just give us a quick overview. What's the problem with cable theft and vandalism and copper theft and all of that? What is it like in Nigeria?
Yeah, it's it's like you've just previously said. It's everywhere the same. This problem is right across the whole world, and the theft is really doing bad to the utilities across the world. And I'm actually here today to bring you some very good news that we are doing very good with this in South Africa. I always say it's not because we're so clever, it's about we have so much time to practice. And in the last 20 years, we've been really battling right through the world with this problem. And South Africa, we've actually got ourselves off the ground by putting in very good structures that can deal with this. And what we're trying to do is to roll it out to the other African countries across the continent and try to explain to them how to deal with this, because this is a very dedicated type of crime. You need to have dedicated crime fighters. And in South Africa, we've managed to put all of that together. So in Nigeria, they've got the same problem. The substations are vandalized. The people are stealing the cables. They're doing all kinds of funny things. And the customers, the consumers, are the people that's losing at the end of the day.
Now, you've put together the manual to deal with this problem. Tell us a little bit what's in that manual and how do you mitigate the problem?
Yeah, I want to go further than just the manual, because the manual is only one of the things that SARPA is dealing with. We've got quite a wide range of things we're looking at, and first of all is to understand the thief, why he's doing things, what is his goals, and be able to actually find ways of dealing with the modus operandi. The second one is to get as many people sensitized as possible to deal with this kind of problems, because normal policemen and judicial people are not trained in this type of crime. It's a new type of crime, just with us about 25 years. And it's very difficult for them to understand what to do, when to do. And one of the most important things we train them is that it is not a small crime, a miscellaneous crime, because you need to deal with these crimes like we do with murder scenes or other very important crime scenes. You have to take all the evidence on the crime scene, then you have to prove the evidence that it belongs to somebody, the cables, and after that you have to go to court and prove it in court. So it's quite a long process, and in the training manual we teach them how to actually catch the thieves, then how to deal with the evidence gathering, and then how to take it to court and be successful, because at this stage most of the cases are thrown out of court because they see it as miscellaneous.
Now, here in South Africa, Rens, we always feel like we're losing this battle against cable theft there. We have a big problem with drug addicts, for instance, in the Cape and elsewhere in the country who target this to feed their drug habits and so forth. Are we doing as badly as we think we are?
Okay, this is, I hope I'm today the guy bringing the good news, because I want to tell you that we are very proud in South Africa of what we achieved. Our crime-fighting environment has actually gone beyond any doubt. You talked earlier about the copper theft units. We very want to get everything structured in South Africa. And what is happening is that you talked about it, that the task units, we want to form these task units. We want to make sure that there's as many task teams as possible in South Africa and that they work together. The police on their side has come to the party by putting together a non-ferrous metal combating committee, which deals with all the policing side that is dealt with by the visible policing units, and then they call the NFMCCC, the non-ferrous metal combating committee. And then you also have, during this year now, has started 2 new forums, which is called the NOC, the National Operational Committees, and the Provincial Operational Committees, where that is chaired by the Hawks, where they look at the syndicates and try and find out how these syndicates operate, because they are very clever. They operate across the police barriers. They move between provinces, as well as they usually have people inside the organizations on our side to give them information. So their intelligence is very good, and we need these units where we can get together. So forming all these type of task teams and things has been excellent. It is the best. It's never happened anywhere in the world. We are very proud of it.
Rens, thank you very much for joining us and for the superb work that you guys are doing. That's the good news with regards to cable theft. Yes, looks like one can be turning the tide, and it's not only in South Africa that we have this problem. It's a continent-wide and global problem with regards to stealing or even the vandalizing of infrastructure. Now, of course, you heard a little bit earlier, I spoke to the Department of Basic Education about what we've seen this week. Allegations of racism and racist practice within the Code of Conduct and the governing councils of schools here in South Africa. Now, the National Heritage Council, after all, it's Heritage Month, they've called the latest allegations of racism at schools a mockery of African culture. This comes after incidents of racism were reported not in one but in various schools across the country. Now, in a statement, the National Heritage Council said it is disappointing to the nation to be dealing with the suppression of languages, the condemnation of African identity, and the use of derogatory words in our young South African democracy. Now, we are joined from our studios in Pretoria by the CEO of the National Heritage Council, Advocate Sonwabile Mankocha. Very good morning to you, sir, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks so much, SABC.
Just give us a quick overview, sir. What happened this week, especially at the Pretoria High School for Girls? How do you view this?
Our view as the Heritage Council is that our country is still facing a lot of challenges, more especially in dealing with this, what we call historic fault lines. That is race, gender, and class. Because all the three elements, if you look at what happened at the Pretoria High, are actually present. Because here is a child whose culture is being undermined, whose identity is being undermined, but also whose blackness is also being undermined, but also is treated as uncivilized and then barbaric in class terms. And therefore, this is why then we're saying the Heritage Council. What therefore happens in schools is a reflection of what is happening in society. Because in schools, this is where people assemble. So what is happening, therefore, in schools, which is not the first instance. I mean, we have seen, for instance, some of the cases going through Human Rights Commission, where two children, I mean, a case of Ngasana, they were punished for speaking their own African language or mother tongue. And then this all of the bullyism in the schools and then all of those things, they cannot be taken away from the realities of our society, that this demon of racism, you still have to deal with it as a society. But also, culture. I mean, there's freedom of culture in this country. It's part of the Bill of Rights. But there's still a lot, that we have to do as society in order for us to foster this, dialogue. But at the same time, how do we ensure that there's cross-pollination? I think as well as the Heritage Council, we have the view that it's important for our white compatriots to visit the countryside and see how, for instance, our black people live. I mean, we see this, for instance, in how the SPCAs of this world treat black culture, when people have to slaughter the animals for rituals, and then so forth. We're on record as the Heritage Council that these are things that must actually happen. I mean, black people, for instance, when they slaughter, it's SPCAs for this world, for instance, they will tell them that what you're doing is anti-animals and so forth. But at the same time, we will find a situation where some, white compatriots don't understand the culture of black people. That is why, therefore, this issue of cross-pollination. Yeah. I mean, black people, for instance, in rural communities, will, when it comes to animals, they name up, totems after animals. Like somebody called Ujola. A snake is actually protected in that family and so forth. Yeah. And some of them are so much surprised in that because they didn't know it. Now, if a white person in South Africa doesn't know that black people view how they treat animals, that they're part of their totems and clans and so forth, and then how much more to somebody who comes from London or Europe, That is why, therefore saying that there's an important discourse in this country about this issue of, cultural, identity, these common cultures. But at the same time, what does it mean to be a South African? That we are actually a part of, even South Africa is part of the African continent. We are in Africa, and then how do we ensure that we all live together? And if we undermine our cultures, it therefore means that there's something that will explode that we don't want.
As the Heritage Council, you spoke about the demon of racism and culture, and how we need to understand the social cohesion process, and we need to all get involved in it. But I wanted to ask you, as the Heritage Council, there have been moves afoot. We've seen a lot of racist incidents in South Africa in the last year. Is it time for us to move and criminalize racism in South Africa?
I think the issue here is that undermining of people cannot be allowed in any form. It's worse their own culture. But the Heritage Council is of the view that we have to condemn this, first of all. But secondly, there might be some steps taken. We have commented around the issue of criminalizing. I mean, we come from a background where, for instance, gambling was outlawed in this country, but it never ended that it was outlawed. I mean, liquor was outlawed in America, and people never stopped drinking. So something that actually comes as part of as a human tendency, it itself is difficult, to deal with it, legislation. Because it sometimes, some of this, I'll make an example about these, forms of human practices. They became more serious when they were criminalized than they were. It therefore means that we have to look at this matter holistically. Whether you criminalize or decriminalize, but the issue that it evolves. If you want to nip this in the bud, you need to open up, and then people must dialogue. We need to. It can't end. There are many instances, for instance, that we have seen. I mean, look at the Free State University case, where white children, urinated over food that should that should be eaten by the people who are as old as grandmothers and so on and so forth. The question is, how do we grow our children free of racial prejudice, or cultural prejudice? And that on its own, criminalizing that is not going to end on itself, on its own. It therefore means that there's a bigger problem that we've got to look at. The churches must rise, people must talk, people must understand each other. Some of the things happen because people don't understand certain things, simple. But some of the things happen because people do them deliberately, And there needs to be, that's why I'm talking about cross-pollination of cultures. Yeah. For instance, SPCA, when we spoke to them, they never understood that the black people named cattle as part of their totems. They were so surprised because they never visited the countryside. It therefore means that we still have to close the gap to understand each other. Yeah. And so that this dream of Nelson Mandela, never again shall this beautiful country experience oppression of one person by another, is realized. And we have to usher in that program. Traditional communities, faith-based organizations, NGOs. It's a program that we must actually sponsor. Remember, the war that in Gulf for a long time, Palestine and Israel, has never been just about material issues. It was about matters of identity, dignity, where certain communities feel that their own identities are here.
Advocate, you are on point, spot on. Thank you for joining us. We've run out of time, though, today. Thank you for joining us and sharing the views of yourself and that of the National Heritage Council. And happy Heritage Month. We hope that the celebrations will be very, very good and positive this month. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
That's the CEO of the National Heritage Council here. In South Africa, Advocate Sonwabile Mankocha. He joined us from the capital in Pretoria to give us his views on, the latest slew of racist allegations and incidents we've seen at our schools here in South Africa. We're going to take a short break. Kendall Mahamati will bring you a sports update right after the short break.
He appealed for the disruptions to come to an end so the future of the children is not compromised.
The union said the latest offer by Eskom will condemn its members to poverty.
Samples from the 2012 London Olympic Games and 2014 Sochi Winter Games will also be retested.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Good morning, welcome back. As Eben promised you, I, Kendall Mahamat, am bringing you sports on Newsroom. Now, even though South Africa suffered their second consecutive defeat in the quadrangular netball series in New Zealand, losing to the host 65-46 in Hamilton, they are a vastly improved side, able to hold their heads high, having given the hosts a run for their money. Now, the Proteas, they came out firing and surprised New Zealand's Silver Ferns with their high intensity. They scored first and surprisingly closed the first quarter with a 16-14 lead. The Proteas went on to hold their own for most of the first half. New Zealand's Silver Ferns, ranked second in the world, took the lead for the first time with less than 7 minutes to go. Now, the Silver Ferns were superior in defence from then on and scored at will from turnover position, as well as eventually winning 65-46. It was the first time in 14 matches that the Proteas had managed to score more than 37 goals against the Kiwis. Now, in other sporting news making headlines today, South Africa fast bowler Dale Steyn has reclaimed the #1 spot in Test bowling. This after the International Cricket Council released their latest player rankings. Steyn achieved his 26th 5-wicket haul in the Proteas' 204-run victory over New Zealand in Centurion 2 days ago. The Proteas quick finished the second Test with match figures of 8 for 99 rather. Steyn lost his #1 ranking after a shoulder injury against England in December 2015, limited his bowling. He has clearly returned to form as he moved ahead of Indian off-spinner Ravichandran Ashwin and England pace bowler James Anderson. Now, in the news recently, but for all the wrong reasons, was former cricketing ace Daryl Cullinan. Speaking to the media, he made utterances that have rankled with many, falling straight off the transformation boat into the murky waters of pre-1994 thinking. One person who took Cullinan to task for this is Sbusiso, I beg your pardon, one person who did take Cullinan to task is Sbusiso Mjikeliso. Is the Business Day senior sports writer. He wrote an article titled, "There are too many people with Daryl Cullinan attitudes running cricket." He's right here with us on a Newsroom. Good morning, thanks very much for having joined us.
Kendall, thanks for having me.
Sbusi, I think first up, please tell us what you mean by that title.
Okay, I don't write headlines, but it was my intro. I did say the problem with cricket is the fact that there are a lot of people who think that black people aren't inherently for the sport of cricket, inherently for sports like rugby. I mean, Cullinan spoke there was a lot of prejudice in what he said, and it's an old attitude. And I refer back to something that Dr. Tutuzeli Nyoka, who was the former president of Cricket South Africa, who also took issue with Cullinan's utterances, and he said that what Cullinan said is nothing new. He said that in the West Indies, the white colonizers used to keep blacks out, the sons of former slaves, from playing cricket by saying it's not a black man's sport. And if that was true, there'd be no Sir Garfield Sobers, there'd be no Brian Lara, there'd be no Curtly Ambrose, no Courtney Walsh, there'd be no great West Indies team of the 70s and 80s, if that was true. And up until very recently in South African cricket, they used to say that cricket isn't an Afrikaner sport. And that's evidently untrue, because our test captains, Faf du Plessis, A.B. de Villiers, are Afrikaansmen. And you can't say that it's not a particular person's sport. There would be no Stian van Zyl. So I took a particular issue with it, and it went back to a lot of things that happened in cricket that pointed to the fact that a lot of people think black people, black Africans most specifically, aren't for the game of cricket.
Very interesting that you bring all of that to bear, because one of the things, looking at the test team of late, it's been very mixed. There have been South Africans of all hues playing, and also seemingly succeeding in some of the formats once or twice. For example, winning this test against New Zealand right here at home, doing extremely well with that ODI side a few months ago. It was there were 8 black players in that particular side, and it seems as if we're on the right track. Is that correct or not?
Look, the players that are in the test team, they're there purely because they're skilled. They bring particular skills that the test team needs. Dane Pete is the spinner. Themba Bavuma is the number 5 batsman. He's played a brilliant role there. And of course, he's the first black African to score 100 for the Proteas. Kagiso Rabada is without doubt one of the best fast bowlers that probably will ever produce. JP Dumini's form has left a lot to be desired, but that's purely form.
Hashim Amla?
Hashim Amla, obviously, you can never doubt Hashim Amla's contribution. These are guys that are there purely on merit. But you look a little further down, it's just about the pool, the chances, who's getting the chances to do what in South African cricket. I mean, one of the things that I mentioned was the Boucher appointment, the fact that Boucher came from the wilderness, literally. He was saving rhinos, which is a noble act, but
it's not cricket.
The only cricketing thing he had done was chuck a few deliveries to Quinton de Kock as a consultant on a once-off basis, and the next thing he gets a franchise gig. There are only 6 franchise gigs. There are people who work their bums off just to get a top-notch job in this country, and there are only 6 of them. And of those 6 franchise gigs, only one person can be the head coach of the Proteas. So if you work so hard just to get there, and once you've gotten there, if you're a Mandla Mashimbi, who's the assistant coach at the Titans, and you've worked so hard to get your foot in the door, but all you will ever be is an assistant coach, it just says that it's just wrong. It's just unfair for anyone to work that hard. Yes, I understand that a Protea with 100 tests or whatever will be considered. I mean, Neil McKenzie is a batting consultant for the Proteas. Charles Langeveld is a bowling consultant for the Proteas. Alan Donald's played that role. So has Lance Klusner. So has Graham Smith. Yes, they'll be considered for those kind of roles. But for what we're doing in this country, it's very, very important that people see that they're getting an opportunity to get those head coaching jobs. It happened to Malbongo Maketa at the Titans as well, and he left and took his chances at the Warriors because they took Rob Walter, a conditioning coach, and made him head coach above Malbongo Maketa. Same thing that's happened to Mandla. So I was addressing that those kind issues, of thing. Yeah. That it points to that. It points to the fact that some people will be trusted and others will not.
You know, it's interesting that you bring all of that up because these are clear-cut cases where opportunities are not being created. In fact, they're being curtailed even before the person gets a chance to get into that space. I mean, there's a stat that I saw recently which questioned. The question was, how many African batsmen, test batsmen, have had more than 10 tests in this country? And it came back.
I can go further and say how many African cricketers at all have had more than 10 tests. 2, Makhaya Ntini, Themba Bavuma.
And Themba Bavuma is only because he got his 10th just now in Centurion.
He got it. That was his 11th in Centurion. Makhaya Ntini has played 101 tests. So the top black player with the most tests has 101. His number 2 has 11. That's a 90 test difference. And now let's say the argument is the Proteas player carries a lot of weight and therefore can become a franchise coach. That means that there have been less than 10 black Africans that have played for the Proteas. How many white players have played for the Proteas? That means the pool will forever favor the white player. Are you telling me that the Titans would have taken Makhaya Ntini as the most experienced African black coach? And if they didn't want Ntini, Mfuneko Ngam is a test Protea, and he's run an academy of a lot of promise at the University of Fort Hare. But why wasn't he plucked? out of nowhere and given a franchise gig. Why? If there's an explanation for that, because he's a test player, he's played for the Proteas. If the explanation is he played for the Proteas, then why couldn't he be plucked and given the head coach job?
Definitely putting in questions you ask, and we're very happy to have you here again, so we can get further and deeper into the topic, because it's a thorny path, but we need to cross that bridge and get to the other side of this.
No, certainly.
Spusi Mjigeli is a Business Day senior sports writer. Give us a lowdown on what he thinks is happening with transformation in the country. Clearly, a very long way to go. That's where we leave it to with this sports bulletin for this hour. We'll be back at the top of the hour with more news and analysis. You're watching Newsroom.
He appealed for the disruptions to come to an end so the future of the children is not compromised.
The union said the latest offer by Eskom will condemn its members to poverty.
Samples from the 2012 London Olympic Games and 2014 Sochi Winter Games will also be retested.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Hello again, everybody. Yes, we are the Newsroom team. Rene West, Evan Janssen, and Kenna Mahamati. We're here for the final hour of this morning's show. We've been asking you a couple of questions, but of course our top story today is HIV treatment for all. That's what we deal with. Well, that's the news. From today, everyone in South Africa can get HIV treatment. We're asking you, is this the answer? We've had a lot of comments come in. Let's have a look at some of the comments. You guys are interacting with it. We love that. We love it when you tell us what you think. Let's have a look. Okay, now this is Dane Thomas. Kendall, I want you to come in here quickly. Now, Dane Thomas is asking me a question here. At Newsroom, he says, I tuned in a bit late, but would like to know, Evan Jensen mentioned a school that didn't allow soccer balls.
Oh, yeah.
Which school? It's my son's high school, Northcliffe High. Oh, yeah. Northcliffe High does not allow soccer to be played on the premises. It doesn't allow a soccer ball to be brought into the school. They're not even allowed to make a ball and do a kickabout on the school premises.
With plastic bags wrapped around with
No, they've got the biggest, they have the biggest sporting fields of all schools here in the northwestern parts of Joburg. But I've had these engagements and I'm at the wit's end.
Wow.
So Dane, it's Northcliffe High, just for the record.
So Dane, if you've got a son who wants to play football, maybe
Northcliffe High. Maybe we should do the soccer protest outside the gate there. I was told by Elijah a bit earlier to go and toy there. No, he didn't say that. Let's have a look at our question of the day. Of course, our question of the day is from Kolani.
Kolani Mwekazi reckons it's a good initiative. This is about HIV, ARV drugs being made available to everybody. You can't only start treating a person when they're about to die. True that. People must be encouraged to take their treatment. You're spot on.
Spot on.
This one coming in from Mbongi Seni, who says, that's the answer. Anyway, I must applaud the way President Zuma's administration under Minister Motsoaledi is fighting the scourge.
And Al-Malachi says, prevention is better than cure. As far as South Africans rated high, people living with HIV, I think ARVs should be added as ingredients. I don't know ingredients to what, but we are concerned in South Africa that more and more HIV patients are being robbed of their ARV treatment, and it's being used as a drug by some people, a drug of choice, which is a concern.
If it can be treated, it should be treated and made available.
Absolutely. Well, there's still a long news hour ahead of us. Let's get straight into it now with Rene West.
As from today, all people with HIV will have access to treatment upon diagnosis, irrespective of their CD4 counts. And one of South Africa's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, pulls the plug on some of the country's COE's financial backing. And Gabon's parliament has been set on fire in ongoing protests after President Ali Bongo was declared the winner of the presidential poll. Now, before we get to that news, let's go over to Kendall to find out what's happening in the sports.
Thank you very much, Renee. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. You have a very interesting tweet that we got there from somebody who supports football in schools. Wanting to know where to send my child.
All sports in school, not just football. I mean, they should be treated equally. We just come out of the Olympics. We've seen we won the medals. Kumbaya. Our national team is battling the football team. We need more soccer players. Yeah. And the schools, they don't want to allow them to even play soccer. They don't have it on the curriculum.
Yeah, and if we've got the facilities as well, we should make sure that we actually get everybody to those facilities, be it netball, be it cricket, be it baseball even. I remember when I was in school, we used to play a game called Rounders. Little short bat, and it was very similar to baseball. You know what? I don't know how many of my schoolmates went into baseball, but they could have because of Rounders.
Rounders? I've never heard of Rounders. But you're a special case, Ken.
Here I am, all rounded. Yeah, very well rounded, special case that I am. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today. The football transfer window closed at midnight last night, and really the big signing on everyone's lips is South Africa is Anele Ngonga's return from Europe to join Mamelodi Sundowns.
Oh, straight up! He's left it alone and it's gone onto his stumps. He was expecting it to go across him, and first delivery, Dale Steyn strikes.
The Palabora Express, Dale Steyn, underlines his bowling supremacy as he reclaims his crown as the top test bowler in the world.
Nadal Quintana needs the win for the time bonus, but Froome is opening up a gap, and Froome is showing himself to be the favourite to win the race overall as he repeats 2011.
The two top riders in La Vuelta, Froome and Quintana, go wheel to wheel in the last climb. Froome wins the stage, but Quintana holds on to the leader's jersey. All this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin. Be sure to stick around for it at about 11:35 or so. For now, though, Renee Vest has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Starting from today, all people with HIV will begin treatment upon diagnosis, irrespective of their CD4 count. This is in line with the World Health Organization's new HIV guideline, which says every HIV-positive person should be initiated on treatment immediately after diagnosis. Previously, treatment was started after a person's CD4 count dropped to below 500. South Africa has the world's largest HIV treatment program with over 3 million people on antiretrovirals. Deputy Director for HIV and AIDS in the National Health Department, Dr. Jürgen Pillay, says the country can't afford not to treat patients. Economists say the move by SA's biggest asset managers, Future Growth, is a show of no confidence in state enterprises and the state as a whole. Future Growth has stopped lending money to 6 of the country's largest state-owned companies temporarily. These include Eskom, Transnet, Sunrail, the Land Bank, the IDC and the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Future Growth says the decision was informed by perceived poor leadership in these institutions. Wits University professor Tsepo Maungalo says the decision by Future Growth is a sound warning to government to better manage state-owned enterprises. Some economists say some of these state companies run a risk of possible liquidation. The rand is currently reflecting market concerns about state-owned entities, institutions and political risk in South Africa, and a fixed income asset manager, Future Growth, now says it has halted lending some state-owned companies. While earlier Eskom hit back at the Treasury following claims it did not cooperate with an investigation into coal contracts. CEO Brian Molefe has also defended the power utilities' dealings with Gupta-owned Tegeta Exploration and Resources, saying that if he has been captured, it's by the Constitution. Eskom was before the Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee.
A day to report on financials, but it soon turned into a mini inquiry into the relationship between Eskom and Tegeta, and the power utility also dismissed any suggestions of capture.
This campaign to kill trust in Eskom, to actually portray us as if we are committed or we are bought or we are captured, is nonsense.
Perhaps I'm captured, but I'm captured by the Constitution.
The power utility also rejected suggestions that it blocked a Treasury investigation into Tegeta.
Our understanding was that after it has been considered by the board, it will be sent to the National Treasury. There was no attempt on our part not to comply.
Eskom also moved to defend coal supplies by Tegeta, saying they were above board, and also defended a 500 million rand advance given to Tegeta, saying this is a normal commercial practice. Capital expenditure by mining companies amounts to 38 billion rand.
The capital expenditure that are required by these mines, obviously the bill for that is footed by Eskom. So we basically make an upfront payment to them in terms of the capital requirements for those mines.
Brian Molefe occasionally took swipes at Treasury, saying they should have summoned him to make a warning statement if Treasury felt Eskom was not cooperating with the Tegeta investigation. Molefe says Treasury approved tender deviations for Tegeta.
The Treasury itself approved a deviation for Korenfontein mine on the 17th of August. Perhaps the Guptas have also captured the Treasury.
The committee is considering calling Eskom back to a joint meeting with the Treasury. This is in order to resolve the contradicting statements between the Treasury and Eskom.
Ulilani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
National Treasury says it will not comment publicly on Denel's statement. South Africa's aerospace and defence company issued a statement last night lambasting Treasury for its threat to bring court action to stop the Denel Asia joint venture. It says the move is political, sheer opportunism and grandstanding, but it welcomes Public Enterprise Minister Lynn Brown's call to talk through how best to resolve all the state-owned enterprise issues. Denel says it served Treasury with a pre-notification of its intention to establish Denel Asia in October 2015, but claims Treasury never raised any objections. Denel says it was only when the name of the Guptas was linked to Denel Asia that National Treasury sent a letter to request further information from the company. The company says allegations that it's captured by the Guptas are unfounded and politically motivated. It insists the Gupta family has no business or joint venture with Denel, and none of the Gupta family members or relatives are shareholders in Denel Asia. The company says Treasury's threat of litigation will be a violation of Chapter 3 of the Constitution, and it intends to vigorously oppose it. The Passenger Rail Services Agency has told a media briefing in Cape Town that it will implement a turnaround strategy in October to address challenges that has tarnished its image. These include, among others, dealing with internal problems and vandalism of its infrastructure. The state-owned agency has recently been in the news for all the wrong reasons, including billions spent on irregular expenditure and dodgy tenders.
We aim to ensure that we increase our revenue by reducing fare evasion. We aim to ensure that we do a bit of realignment of our structures internally to ensure that we've got controls and that our supply chain management processes are intact and they're working.
In news from the rest of the continent, protesters have set fire to Gabon's parliament after President Ali Bongo was declared the winner of Saturday's presidential poll. Thousands of people took to the streets after the announcement and accused the government of stealing the election. At least 6 people have been admitted to hospital with bullet wounds. Several of the wounded said they were shot by security forces. The parliament lies on the same road as the state TV headquarters, several embassies and the French Cultural Centre. According to official results, Bongo won the poll by taking 49% of the vote to 48% for his rival Jean Ping. The Department of International Relations has asked South African citizens to stay indoors. In international news, the Venezuelan opposition has called for a mass demonstration today to support the recall of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The opposition has been trying for months now to get the recall scheduled, and this demonstration, where 1 million Venezuelans are expected to participate, could be a real showdown. President Maduro has threatened the opposition, saying what Turkish President Erdogan melted out to his rivals after the failed coup attempted there would look like child's play compared with the action he would take if Venezuelans opposition tried something similar. Our Latin American correspondent, Juan Carlos Rivas Lamas, has this report.
Venezuelans have been getting up before dawn to wait in line to get into grocery stores and pharmacies that often have no basic food items or basic medicines on the shelves. With the plunge in the price of oil, the people of this oil-rich nation are struggling to live with skyrocketing inflation, rolling power blackouts, and water rationing. The crisis has reached across borders, where thousands of Venezuelans have crossed into neighboring Colombia in search of food and other basic staples. The police and the army plan to be out in full force at the march, but the opposition has vowed not to back down. As for many here, ousting President Nicolas Maduro is the first step towards pulling Venezuela out of its current economic and political crisis.
Former Mexican President Vicente Fox has told United States media that Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is not welcome in his country, arguing that 130 million Mexicans don't want him there. The outspoken former president was reacting to news that the controversial candidate would travel to Mexico at the invitation of current President Enrique Peña Nieto just hours before giving him a highly anticipated speech on immigration in Arizona later tonight. With Trump lagging his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton in all major polls and crucially in most swing states needed with the election, his campaign is hoping to cast the candidates as decisive and presidential.
True to form, the announcement from Mr. Trump was both unexpected and made on Twitter last night. That he had accepted the invitation of President Peña Nieto and that he was looking forward to meeting with him. Mexico's president responding on Twitter that he had invited both Trump and Clinton to discuss bilateral issues. This would be the GOP candidate's first official overseas trip in his capacity as the Republican nominee, but it comes at a time when the campaign is struggling to make inroads into the minority vote that remains crucial to winning the election in November. Additionally, he is expected to give a wide-ranging policy speech on immigration later tonight after facing a backlash over his persistent threats to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants once elected. It remains unclear if Mr. Trump will soften his policy that has seen millions of Americans flock to his camp over talk like this.
We will build the wall 100%, and Mexico will be paying for the wall. We will build it 100%. I see all this stuff given out over the last 3 or 4 days by the media that Trump doesn't want to build the wall, folks. We are building the wall, okay? And remember this also. I have great respect for Mexico's leaders because, frankly, they're smarter, tougher, and more cunning than ours.
U.S. media earlier, former Mexican President Vicente Fox called Trump's visit a very opportunistic move, labeling him a false prophet who is cheating everybody. He said that inviting the GOP candidate to Mexico would only make sense if he apologized about past statements about Mexicans. The Clinton campaign, for its part, is sitting pretty in the polls and has shrugged off the visit to Mexico as a distraction that will do little to quell questions about Trump's policies to voters here in the United States, as they continue to push the message that he is appealing to a right-wing fringe.
From the start, Donald Trump has built his campaign on prejudice and paranoia. He is taking hate groups mainstream and helping a radical fringe take over the Republican Party. His disregard for the values that make our country great is profoundly dangerous.
And while the impact of today's trip across the border remains at best speculative, it will undoubtedly receive widespread coverage that has become customary of Donald Trump and his campaign for president.
Brazilians are divided over the impeachment of leftist leader Dilma Rousseff. They have demonstrated both against and in her favor after a majority of senators voted for her to be stripped of the presidency. Rousseff's opponents have hailed her removal, while her supporters say their votes to keep her in power have been wasted. 61 of 81 senators convicted the country's first female president of illegally manipulating the national budget. She was accused of using money from state banks to bankroll public spending. The impeachment brings an end to 13 years of leftist Workers' Party rule. Congress has sworn in the conservative Michel Temer to serve the remainder of the presidential term to 2018. The first regular commercial flight in 55 years from the United States to Cuba has landed in Santa Clara after a flight from Fort Lauderdale. It's the latest step between the two nations to try and boost ties.
You could say it was a flight that took more than half a century. A JetBlue passenger jet lands in the central Cuban city of Santa Clara Wednesday. The flight opened another chapter in the Obama administration's effort to improve ties and increase trade and travel with the former Cold War foe.
It's a huge moment. So many families. I was just meeting with some of the passengers on the
on the plane. One gentleman had been born here, hadn't been back for 60 years, and he's reconnecting with his family, and it's just amazing.
Here we are today celebrating this historic first flight, and this is just the beginning. I look forward to growing our service here in the years to come.
Fox also met with Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez. Cuba and the United States began normalizing relations in December 2014. That's after 18 months of secret talks and have since restored full diplomatic ties. The countries had been hostile for more than 5 decades. Now, another chapter closes, with the Obama administration hoping regular scheduled flights will help usher in a new era.
Well, that's all the news from your newsroom team. Now we'll be taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news on weather after this.
For Pile, giving up was no option even in times of need.
If it wasn't for the opportunity that was given to me by the taxi owner, late Mr. Sibego, maybe I wouldn't be where I am.
The taxi industry is also occupied by people with a vision.
There are quite a few taxi drivers with at least matric. And they had a next door neighbor who owned taxis, and they asked him for a job.
He now owns a law firm, and he believes that challenges are meant to be conquered.
Once you step on top of them, you are able to be on another level, and they remain under your feet.
He says hard work granted him his dream of becoming a lawyer of note.
I don't really believe in miracles. People work.
Join Puleng Mulibati every Friday at 17:30.
Hello again. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, many people across the country celebrate the 1st of September as Spring Day and the dawn of the new season. However, in the southwestern parts of the country, it certainly may not feel like spring, as temperatures has dropped to under 15 degrees and even below zero in some parts. Now, this then makes the topic of seasonal transition quite difficult to attach a specific date on. But the man that's going to try and dissect it for us is Tsetse Paul Monare. He's here to tell us a bit more and give us further insight as to what we can expect for the next couple of months. Tsetse, good morning. Nice to have you with us once again.
Likewise, thank you.
Always nice to have you with us. But just give us, let's start with why is it so warm in Gauteng and so cold in the Western Cape, and it's supposed to be the first day of spring?
Yeah, it's quite a complex situation that's going on. And, you know, I've always been saying this, that people, when there's a cold front, you must always remember, before the cold front, you'll get lots of warm air and hot and dry temperatures. And after the cold front, the cold conditions and cold weather with the rain and fall. Yeah. So we had this cold front that I think it came through to Cape Town around Monday, Tuesday. So ahead of that cold front is what we're experiencing now, the warm air and the hot conditions. And the cold front did not materialize all the way towards the northeastern side, whereas it should be cooler today and tomorrow here in Gauteng, but it's not. So it just went down towards KwaZulu-Natal. So it's still leaving us with the hot and dry conditions over the northeastern side and really cold conditions over the southwestern regions. And basically also jumping into spring, which is what should happen because it's supposed to be warm and sunny at this time of the year for us. But the South African, climatical map is so different. It's like we have Sahara Desert on the northern parts and southwestern parts, we have European weather. Basically, and that's Mediterranean, yes, let me put it like
Not
that.
European.
Mediterranean weather, yes, where we have rainfall in winter and cooler conditions around this time. But, people are actually expecting spring. Even, I bet you there's a Cape Townian there that went to sleep last night and thought, tomorrow is going to be sunny and warm.
With a floral dress and
yes,
a beautiful floral shirt.
Yes, but then it's just not happening because the date has just been placed so specifically to the 1st of September as being Spring Day. Yes, we all accept it, and most of the country is supposed to accept that, but the southwestern part is completely different. There, the weather is still cold. There's even possibilities of snow in some areas. Yeah, and we should have some pictures here at the back.
Yeah, let's just have a look at those pictures. I want to talk about the next 3 months because I saw, this is of course Namaqualand, isn't it? It's the most beautiful part of South Africa at this time of the year. The beautiful weather, beautiful scenery, almost once in a lifetime only place in the world where you really can see this kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. This is basically breathtaking. And, you know, with a little bit of rain that took place just about 2-3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, yeah, it could have helped fuel this up and get it to be the way it is. Yes, and I hope it continues.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I know that's really springtime. Love that picture. But tell us about the outlook for the country for the next for the next 3 months, for spring really, because I read from the Weather Service that spring's going to be quite warm in the northern parts of the country. What is the outlook there and for the rest, and why is it a little bit warm?
Yeah,
what is La Nina? That's the thing I wanted to ask.
Yes, well, La Nina is complete opposite of the El Nino effect that we went through last season. You remember this time last year, going into November and even up until March, it was super hot and super dry. We had almost no rainfall whatsoever. So that's basically what is sort of happening at the moment, is that, you know, we're still experiencing a little bit of those effects because El Nino is not just 1 year. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, like 18 to about 36 months to completely go over. And then we followed by a La Nina, which opposite, where we get wetter conditions, lots of rainfall. But we're seeing, I looked at some of the extended forecast that we're going to have a bit later on, starting for spring, is that we're still going to experience drier weather here in South Africa, and also hotter than usual temperatures. It's almost going to feel like spring is going to be 2 weeks, and then it's going to be cut straight into summer. And basically, that's what's happening with climate change. The whole world's climate is changing.
It's all be crazy.
Yes, advancing to this new position that we are going through. And unfortunately, the hot and dry conditions here in South Africa, which have been there with us, this is not unusual. But, you know, it's just getting a bit more extremer and a bit longer than it has always been happening.
When is the rain coming here in the northern parts of the country? Because we need rain. We've got water restrictions here in Johannesburg.
Yes. Some of our dams are only full to 33% capacity, or some of the rivers, which is really, really bad. 33% is very, very low.
It's very low. We're going to be drinking mud soon.
Exactly. You know, we're not going to survive with that. And the rainfalls are expected to come a little bit later, which is not really a great thing. We're seeing some rain towards the Western Cape Province also because of these cold fronts. But if those continue, that means the seasons are just going to be delayed, and the rainfall is also going to be even more delayed. So you should expect some of our first thunderstorms to come through late October, maybe even mid-November. And they're supposed to come earlier October.
Before you go, right now, just around 11 o'clock, we've got this eclipse, the annular eclipse.
Yes.
We've got the beautiful picture up. This is what is happening. Tell us a little bit about the eclipse. And is it the time to start a new diet?
You should have started the diet long ago. Anyway, before we go on summer bodies and all that, eclipse, yes, these are always phenomenal to see, but very, very dangerous. A lot of people just go up and look up to the sky and expect to see it right now. I can guarantee you, one of my colleagues, Molen from Uganda, and the other one, Patricia from Kenya, they're telling me that it's actually dark now over Central Africa, in Kenya and in Uganda, because that's where it's most prominent. For us, it happened at 11:02 here, but it was still bright as day. You can't really see it much unless you use protective measures to check it out. Yes, and what is happening now, let me quickly explain this, is that we have the moon right in between the sun and the earth. There's the sun, obviously.
Let's have a look at it, guys.
Yeah, the sun in the big bright yellow, and then the earth there.
Here we go.
And in the middle, that grayish dot, that's what the moon is. And penumbra, so that's basically the brighter shade of the moon. It's being reflected to us, and that's what's blocking off the sun. You saw the picture earlier on. Okay, this picture just shows where you would see it mostly.
Where it's most visible.
Most visible, yes.
Okay, so it's not so big for us.
Not so big for us. This is what the moon is doing. You can't really see what's happening there, but the dark shade there, that's the moon, and it's basically cutting in front of the sun.
In front of the sun.
Yes, and that's what we get.
And it happens once in a blue moon, as it were.
Last one happened in 2000 and long ago. 2014, not so long ago. That was a really great one.
Really, you can't come and tell half-truths here on air, as you do when you tell us the weather. You tell us half-truths.
Complete truths.
Before I let you go, let's have a look at what you guys are talking about with regards to the solar eclipse. Maybe Tsetse can interact with you on what people are saying. This one from Cocoa Feed. And it says annual eclipse of September 1, 2016 in Nigeria. Tsietse, this is what they're seeing in Nigeria, or what they've been seeing in Nigeria right now. Am I right?
Yes, definitely. Also in Uganda, it looks exactly like this now.
There you go. That is good. So solar eclipse in SA reflection using a Samsung back camera. Now I can safely that Samsung is dope. Okay, my dear. They're not going to send you a free camera.
George Park says today's solar eclipse at its maximum in Fort Dauphin, wherever the place is, in Madagascar. Through bamboo and just enough cloud. That's actually a great way to take a selfie. You must be in the shade.
In the shade?
It will help. Yeah, it will help.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tsietse. It's always great to have you with us. It's always great to have Tsietse with us. He brings such wonderful energy. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much.
Nice to, hopefully you can bring us the good news. Maybe you can tell us when the rain is coming for real in the next couple of days.
I need to do the rain dance for that.
Do the rain dance, he says. Now, of course, on a serious note, thank you, Tsietse. On a serious note, we've asked you today about our top story today. You know, the announcement from today, HIV treatment for all. Not just beneath a CD4 count of 500, but for all South Africans. We ask you, what are your thoughts? And is this the answer? Is this the way forward? Now, we've had lots of comments on this. Kolani says, good initiative. You can't only start treating a person when they're about to die. That is such a strong comment. Bongiseni says, that's the answer for sure. Anyway, I must applaud the way President Zuma's administration under Minister Motsoaledi is fighting the scourge. Yes, we have the biggest rollout of antiretrovirals in the world. Just to finish Kolani's tweet there, when they're about to die, it says people must be encouraged to take their treatment. Yes, we do encourage people to take their treatment. This one from Al Malachi, prevention is better than cure. As far as South Africans are rated high with regards to treating people living with HIV/AIDS, I think ARVs should be added as ingredients. No, you can't put ARVs as ingredients. Keep it coming. We love to interact with you. We love your thoughts. Now, we move on. Now, the 8th Josie Book Fair is here with us right now. The Josie Book Fair is a fair for readers and writers and promotes all South African languages. The book fair is an educational as well as cultural festival where the public also hosts some of the events. The fair is co-hosted by Kanya College and Wits University. Now, to tell us a little bit more about the book fair, we are joined by Opa Lehulere, one of the organisers of the fair. Very good morning to you, Opa. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning to the listeners and the viewers as well.
Opa, just give us a quick idea. I've been to the book fair. I've always enjoyed it. What's different this year?
Firstly, I think the partnership with Wits and the space where the book fair is held has given us a lot of new possibilities. We have, for example, this year a whole kind of dedicated poetry program, more than 20 poets, book launches of poetry, discussions around poetry. The poet laureate actually has been mentoring a number of young poets, and he will be in conversation with them. So it's a very exciting poetry program. But what it also does, of course, it gives a space for those who are not formally on the program to come and say, I've got poems to read, I've been writing something, listen to me, how does it sound? And of course, around poetry as well, we have workshops. And this has been done for both the schools program, which started this morning, as well as, of course, the youth and adult program.
You mentioned the poets and the poetry scene is a big revival. Who are the big names that are going to be there? What are the sort of marquee names that people should maybe have a look out for?
As I said, of course, Keorapetse Khositsile, who is a very well-known poet, long-standing. James Matthews, as well, is doing and republishing an anthology of some of his poems from 76 to the present. We have a lot of young poets, but also interestingly in this session of the poetry, we have the 6 to 10 to 12-year-old poets who are also publishing a book of poetry. So it's a range from the stalwarts, the very well-known, to the very, very young, who are only beginning to enter.
Now, Opa, this is your public interface. Just talk us through the interface. How can people interact with the book fair? Tell us about the duration and when is it starting till when does it last? Or just talk to this page first.
The book fair started this morning with a schools program. We've got about 50 schools from all over Gauteng who've come to the book fair. They've been reading books by these authors, Khositsile, a range of others, and they will be discussing, that's the schools now will be discussing, their poetry with Jake Mda, with Mashilo, that's James Matthews. And then, of course, after the 2 days of the schools program, we have the main adult program, where, of course, you can see all the main authors, Adam Habib, Justice Malala, some of the analysts who've been kind of taking up current affairs debates.
Yeah, I see Susan Boyson. I worked with her during the election
Boyson,
and so forth.
She's also talking at the place. So that's what's going to be happening. We're also having a particular focus, of course, on youth, which is why it's kind of Youth Rising, constructing the kind of conversations between the old and the young, those who used to be young and made change in this country. And those who are making change
when you decided on this theme, Youth Rising, it's obviously on the back of what's happening with young people in South Africa. It's the Fees Must Fall movement, but importantly also we see school-going children standing up for their rights and fighting the latest kind of debacle around hair and identity and these kinds of things. These are the sorts of discussions that will be on.
These are the sort of discussions that will be there, and both at the level of the literature, as I said, the poets, a lot of young poets, and of course at the roundtable discussions, we'll be taking up the Fees Must Fall, we'll be talking the future of the university. In the light of all these developments, we'll be talking also about what is the state of youth. The statistician general, Paleli Hotla, is actually in conversation at the book fair. He will be talking, he's been issuing quite an extensive number of reports on the state of young people in the country as part of the kind of 40th anniversary reflection of 76 and so on. So youth is going to be a fairly dominant theme. And besides that, of course, a lot of young people are also exhibiting artworks in this space. And of course, they'll be participating in a range of seminars and workshops that will be taking place there.
That's very interesting. The thing that stands out for me is that some of the events will be hosted by the public. How is that going to work? And how is it? Can you just walk in and do your thing, or is it a little bit more organised than that?
Yes, it's a bit more organised than that. But what we've done is that since at the beginning of the year, we issue a call on our website and various other medias, and we say, look, if you've got a book that you've been working on, even if it's not complete, and you want to participate in a workshop on how to complete it, if you've got a poetry book that you want to launch, but we have a lot of people who are self-publishing, in other words, who are not connected to any of the major publishing houses. And those people have taken the space to say they will be launching their book, they will be talking about it. So out of that, in a way, we have a situation where about just over 50% of the events there are actually people who volunteered and say, I want to do something, I want to run a workshop, I want to do something like that.
And if you had to make a call now, who would you be inviting to the book fair? We know that the usual suspects will always be there in Johannesburg. We have a kind of rich intellectual class here in Joburg. They'll be there. But who are you inviting to the book fair that's different this year?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, the aim of the book fair in a very, very focused sense is how do we bring ordinary people, the township residents, the township youth, the township women into the book fair. And when you come to the book fair, you will actually see, in a sense, people who in their daily life, they are home-based carers dealing with HIV and so on, discussing issues around HIV, but also in a way they've read books where they will be conversing with authors. So the idea is to bring around this a whole spectrum of people, from the young, people who are coming into the space of books, and because we think that really is the future of the book fair.
Opa, I can continue this conversation with you for hours on end, because I think we need to read more in South Africa and been involved in programs to get us to read a little bit more and get us to not put money in books but to open them and read them. But I'm definitely coming to the book fair and looking forward to it, and I know it will be very successful, and it will be a marquee event in Johannesburg. Thank you for coming in and introducing to us here at Newsroom again. Yes, that's Opa Lehulere talking to us about the 8th. We put it the 9th on the super, that's wrong. It's the 8th Josie Book Fair, and it, of course, started a little bit earlier today. It will end on Sunday here at Wits University. You can do a whole host of things. You can go look at art, you can buy books, you can interact with the show. It's fantastic. It's one of the marquee events in Johannesburg every year. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to say goodbye because I'm starting to shine a little bit, as you can see. Kendall Mahamati is going to come in and give us a final sports update for today. We'll see you again. I will see you again tomorrow.
Yeah, it's more of a validation, you know, it's more of like, okay, you're on it, because it's been a dream and a goal from the beginning, like to get here.
The fact that the rest of the world is actually acknowledging the amount of work we put into, into music as Africa as a whole, I think it's fantastic. It's a big one for South Africa too.
The School of Ballet in Nigeria has changed many a mindset in dance.
Saw it a lot on TV and we looked at it like something that probably could not be taught to us because we thought it was like a white man dance or probably something it's their culture now, but it actually taught me that it's not just about culture because dance is a language.
For more arts and entertainment news, catch Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on a Newsroom. Our top story is the 2016-2017 ABSA Premiership season started in earnest last week, with some teams showing cracks while others are promising to cause havoc. But before the transfer window closed at midnight last night, already a number of players were confirmed by different teams to be in their camps. Bafana defender Anele Ngqongqa will play in the ABSA Premiership for the first time as he joined league champions Mamelodi Sundowns.
The Cape Town-born Ngqongqa played for FC Fortune in the National First Division before jetting off to Belgium, where he spent 9 seasons with Belgian outfit Genk. He's joining the expensively assembled Sundowns, who are a marvel to watch when attacking. And the problem of failing to shut the back door is soon to be a thing of the past for the Brazilians if the signing of 2 defenders is anything to go by.
They have brought in the likes of Anele Ngqongqa to shore up the defense. They've signed a Brazilian centre-back, Ricardo Nascimento. I watch him play against SuperSport in an MTA Cup finals. What a player. His tactical awareness, his attitudiness, his way of defending is second to none. And indeed, they are going to add value to Sundowns. And already Villa showed what he can do.
Bidvest Vet, who beat both Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates 2-1 last week, will be challenging for honours this season. Sfiso Mieni has rejoined the team from Pirates.
They've been able to bring in players that add value to the team. Despite the fact that they lost Busiso Vilagazi to Mamelodi Sundowns, they were able to buy well and negotiate properly, very intelligently, and get Katbel Malajila and, of course, Makulugu Ngele from Botswana.
Meanwhile, in the Western Cape, Ajax Cape Town confirmed signing dribbling wizards Mark Mayambela and Lebuhange Mkwena. And Cape Town City are also promising to be tough customers.
He's brought in a player called Sim. We've already nicknamed him Sim Card. He's going to be harmful for defenders because he's tall and lanky and he knows where the net is.
The ABSA Premiership will resume on the 13th of September. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Staying with footballing news, but a little less pleasant. Tandani Nchumayelo's agent, Tim Sugazi, says he hopes the player's admission of guilt for using a banned substance will see his 4-year ban from playing football reduced. Nchumayelo was recently sentenced to a 4-year ban from football for testing positive for cocaine. Pirates then terminated Nchumayelo's contract after he was found guilty by the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sports. Earlier this week, I managed to catch up with Sugazi and asked him if they were expecting such a stiff sentence.
We looked at it, obviously working on the matter prior to the hearing. You know, we knew what the maximum sentence was. And Of course, given the nature of the offense, the violation itself, and the person involved, we pretty much sense that it might go that far, because lately SADC, which is the South African Institute for Drug-Free Sports, I think they've intensified the rules, and they really work on the basis of strict application of the laws. And therefore, that being so, we knew that we might find ourselves in this situation. But of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of the world. In fact, we cannot do anything any further. We knew yet again that we would have a right to appeal. And we are considering all sorts of issues, facts, and circumstances. And within 21 days since the date of the sentence itself, we are required to note an appeal. And I think that's what we're going to do.
Now, with that said, one of the other things that was quite stiff for a lot of people and surprising was the immediate termination of his contract by his former football club, I should say, Orlando Pirates. Is that precedented, that they would just immediately just let him go? Were there other things going on at the club that there was no comeback for him? He hasn't even appealed.
Yeah, look, people will know that this matter came into the public domain just now. But actually, the letters and all notifications from SAFA to the league, from the league to the player himself and us, all that happened around May. And therefore, the club was well aware of this, and obviously they anticipated what would be the outcome. And as soon as we got the date for the DCU from SADC, and which was the 16th of August, the club set down its own hearing date, which was the 19th, so 3 days later. And in this particular instance, I think they were left with no choice but following the great footsteps of SADC and impose what would be a sanction, which warrants this kind of conduct. And they took it from what SADC had decided.
What now, Fonchimayelo? Okay, you've mentioned that you are going to appeal that 4-year ban. In terms of what happens to him now, obviously you want him to try and get to play football as soon as possible because he's 26, 4-year ban, it's the end of his career. Yeah. Firstly. Secondly, in terms of rehabilitation, if he needs any, in terms of lifestyle decisions and choices that he might need help with, what's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, look, he's devastated, as you can imagine. We are also equally devastated because, believe you me, we didn't see this one coming, and neither did the football fraternity. I'm sure about that. So, that being so, right now he's obviously going under a lot of psychological, I think, pressure, be it family, people close to him, and all sorts of people next to him. And as you know, when days are dark, friends are few. Oh, yes. I can imagine many of those, maybe more especially those that lured him into this, they might have already walked away from him in this particular situation. But as his agency, we realize that he needs us more than ever. So we give him that kind of support, and we know that it's going to take time for this to dawn on him. It's going to take a couple of weeks and months. So we'll keep on counseling him. And of course, once the dust settles, it is only then that we'll start collecting our thoughts as to the way forward. And like you correctly indicated, if there is a possibility of prior indulgences, which might be party to, yes, I think, addiction or anything to that effect, I think it's something that we'll look into and take the necessary steps.
All right, let's hope the young man the best as he tries to clean it all up and get back on track. Now, South Africa's top-ranked tennis player, Kevin Anderson, is through to the third round of the U.S. Open at Flushing Meadows in New York. Anderson beat Canadian Vasek Pospisil 7-6, 6-4, 6-4. There was drama on court when 13th seed Johanna Konta of Britain had to recover from a health scare to win her match and seal her place in the third round.
Leading by a set and serving at set point down in the second, the 25-year-old Konta suddenly dropped to her knees, shaking and struggling to catch her breath as temperatures neared 31 degrees Celsius. She dropped a set on a double fault after receiving extensive treatment, including ice bags. But after a bathroom break between sets, she recovered and beat Bulgaria's Vetana Pironkova 6-2, 5-7, 6-2 to seal her spot in the third round.
I knew I straight away needed to get ice on myself and try to get my breathing down and start just really, starting to calm myself down and in turn my muscles and my heart calm down as well. So that's basically what happened. It was very embarrassing.
Third-seeded Spaniard Garbine Muguruza was the first major casualty in the women's singles, going down 5-7-4-6 to 48th ranked Anastasia Sevastova of Latvia. Serving for a spot in the third round at 5-1, Sevastova had 2 match points but could not convert. Muguruza registered the break to keep her hopes alive. But Sevastova stilled her nerves, collecting one more service break with a forehand cross-court winner to clinch a 7-5-6-4 victory. Milos Raonic became the first major casualty in the men's singles. American qualifier Ryan Harrison beat the Canadian 5th seed 6-7, 7-5, 7-5, 6-1. Fourth-seeded Spaniard Rafael Nadal beat Italian Andras Seppi 6-love, 7-5, 6-1 to progress to the third round. Pesinka to SABC News.
Okay, that's where we'll leave it. Thanks very much for having joined us. You've been watching Newsroom. I'm Kendall Makhamat. I'll be back with the rest of the team tomorrow, 9 a.m. till 12. Be sure to join us then. Until then, this is Alex.
Innovators all over Africa are using technology to solve the continent's problems.
We looked at all the different startup accelerators, and Hack Josie was born.
And governments are finding new ways to improve the lives of citizens.
We anticipate it will be in a position to handle a capacity of 20,000 logs per second.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media scene. That's Network with Ms. Pumela Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.